Mom, just stay here. We'll come back for you after check-in. Sandra didn't even look at me when she said it. She was already walking away, her heels clicking against the cold airport floor, one hand gripping her designer purse, the other waving dismissively over her shoulder like I was a dog being told to sit. My son Michael followed her without a word, without a glance, without hesitation. I watched them disappear into the crowd with my grandchildren, the same grandchildren I'd raised while they worked, the same grandchildren I'd fed, bathed and loved for 15 years. They never came back. 8 hours later, I was still sitting in that same plastic chair, and that's when I realized I wasn't forgotten. I was abandoned, on purpose. If you want to hear what I did next, subscribe to this channel and stay until the end. Comment below with the city you're watching from. I want to see how far my story travels. This is what happened. The morning started with Sandra's voice cutting through my bedroom door at 5 a.m. Eleanor, we're leaving in an hour. You better be ready. I was already awake, had been since 3, couldn't sleep. My suitcase sat by the door, packed 3 days early with everything I thought I'd need for a week in Maui. Harold, God rest his soul, and I had talked about going there someday. We never made it. Cancer took him before we could, but now 32 years later, I was finally going. My son Michael had invited me. Well, Sandra had suggested it, which surprised me. She'd barely spoken a kind word to me in 18 years of marriage to my son. It'll be a family trip, she'd said last month, her smile too wide, her eyes too bright. The kids want you there, Eleanor. It wouldn't be the same without Grandma. I remember feeling my heart lift when she said that. After 18 years of cold shoulders and backhanded compliments, maybe she was finally warming up to me. Maybe we could finally be a real family. I should have known better. I should have remembered the last 18 years, the way she'd roll her eyes when I offered to help in the kitchen, the way she'd correct my grammar in front of guests, the way she'd tell Michael I was too much whenever I stayed more than 2 days. But hope is a foolish thing, especially at 77. You want so badly to believe that your own family loves you that you ignore every sign telling you otherwise. I dressed carefully that morning. Navy slacks, a cream blouse I'd ironed twice, comfortable shoes for the flight. I even put on the pearl earrings Harold gave me for our 40th anniversary. When I came downstairs with my suitcase, Sandra was waiting in the kitchen. She looked me up and down, her lip curling slightly. "What's that?" I looked down at my bag. "My suitcase." "It's huge, Eleanor. We said 1 carry-on each. The overhead bins aren't going to fit that monstrosity." "This is a carry-on. I measured it against the airline requirements." Sandra rolled her eyes. "Fine, but if we have to check it, you're paying the fee. I'm not wasting money on your poor planning." Michael appeared behind her, coffee in hand, scrolling through his phone. "Morning, Mom." "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you sleep well?" He didn't look up, just grunted and walked past me toward the garage. That was the first crack in my heart that day. My own son walking past me like I was furniture. The grandchildren came down next, Tyler, 16, slouching in a hoodie, Madison, 14, face buried in her phone. Neither said good morning, neither even acknowledged I was standing there. "Kids," I said, trying to keep my voice cheerful, "are you excited about Hawaii?" Tyler shrugged. Madison kept scrolling. "Madison." I tried again. "I brought those cookies you like, the ones with the chocolate chips. I made them fresh yesterday." She looked up briefly. "I'm gluten-free now, Grandma." "Oh, I didn't know." "It's fine." She went back to her phone. Sandra clapped her hands. "All right, everyone in the car. We're running late because someone couldn't pack a normal-sized bag." I felt my cheeks burn, but I said nothing. That's what I'd learned to do over 18 years. Say nothing. Smile. Accommodate. I reached for my suitcase, but no one offered to help. I dragged it through the garage myself, my hip already starting to ache, and loaded it into the back of Michael's SUV while everyone else climbed in and got comfortable. The drive to the airport was tense. Sandra complained about traffic the entire way. Michael drove in silence, jaw-tight, knuckles white on the steering wheel. The kids had their earbuds in, lost in their own worlds. I sat in the back seat, squeezed between luggage that wouldn't fit in the trunk, trying to make myself as small as possible. "I told you we should have left earlier," Sandra snapped at Michael. "We're fine." "We're not fine. Security is going to be a nightmare, and if we miss this flight because of your mother's oversized bag—" "It's not oversized," I said quietly. Sandra's head whipped around. "Excuse me." "The bag, it meets the requirements. I checked." She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes cold. "Well, we'll see about that, won't we?" I didn't respond. I'd learned long ago that arguing with Sandra only made things worse. At the airport, Michael pulled up to the departure terminal and immediately started unloading bags onto the curb. Sandra was inside before I'd even opened my door. "Mom, hurry up," Michael said, not looking at me. "We don't have time for you to move at your usual pace." My usual pace. Like I was deliberately being slow, like my 77-year-old body was inconveniencing him on purpose. I struggled out of the SUV, my knees protesting, and grabbed my suitcase. By the time I got it out, Michael was already walking toward the automatic doors, Tyler and Madison trailing behind him. Inside the airport was chaos. Lines everywhere, people rushing in every direction, announcements blaring overhead. I felt disoriented, overwhelmed. I hadn't been to an airport in over 20 years. Sandra appeared at my elbow, her perfume too strong, her grip on my arm too tight. "Eleanor, listen to me carefully. The security line is insane right now. We need to split up to make this work." "Split up? But I don't—" "Michael and I will take the kids through the priority lane. We have status. You'll have to go through the regular line." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. "You want me to go through security alone, Sandra? I haven't been to an airport since—" "You'll be fine. You're a grown woman, Eleanor. Surely you can manage a simple security line." "But where do I go after I don't know which—" "Just follow the signs." She was already backing away, her eyes darting toward where Michael stood with the kids. "We'll meet you at the gate, gate 47. Can you remember that, 47? "Wait, Sandra. Write it down if you have to. We really need to go." "But—" She was gone. Michael was gone. Tyler and Madison were gone. I stood there in the middle of the terminal, suitcase in hand, completely alone, surrounded by strangers rushing past me like I was a rock in a river. I felt tears prick my eyes, but I blinked them back. I would not cry. Not here. Not now. Gate 47. I could do this. I had raised 3 children. I had run a household for 40 years. I had survived Harold's death. I could navigate an airport. I found the security line and joined the back of it. It stretched endlessly, wrapping around barriers like a snake. The people ahead of me shuffled forward, inch by inch faces, blank patience worn thin. 90 minutes. That's how long it took. 90 minutes of standing on my aching hip. 90 minutes of watching families go through together while I stood alone. 90 minutes of removing my shoes, my jacket, my jewelry, of being patted down by a woman young enough to be my granddaughter, of watching my belongings disappear into the X-ray machine and praying they'd come out the other side. When I finally made it through, I was sweating. My hip was screaming. My heart was racing. I looked at my watch. We still had 40 minutes until boarding. Plenty of time. I found a map on the wall and traced my finger to gate 47. It was on the other side of the terminal, near the end of Concourse B. I walked as fast as I could, dragging my suitcase behind me, dodging businessmen in suits and families with strollers and young people who didn't watch where they were going. My hip burned with every step. My breath came in short gasps. But I kept going. Michael and Sandra were waiting. I couldn't let them down. When I finally reached gate 47, I was out of breath and drenched in sweat. I scanned the waiting area looking for familiar faces, for Michael's tall frame, for Sandra's blonde hair, for Tyler's hoodie or Madison's purple backpack. They weren't there. I checked the gate number again. The sign clearly said 47. This was right. Where were they? I approached the desk where a young woman in a blue uniform was typing something into her computer. "Excuse me," I said, trying to catch my breath. "Can I help you?" "I'm looking for my family. Whitmore. Michael Whitmore. We're on the flight to Maui." She typed something, then looked up with a puzzled expression. "Ma'am, the Maui flight isn't departing from this gate." "What but Sandra said? The gate was changed this morning. It departed from gate 52. My blood ran cold. Changed. But how would I know? There was an announcement about 90 minutes ago. It went out over the PA system. 90 minutes ago, when I was in the security line, when I couldn't hear anything over the noise and chaos. I need to get to gate 52, I said, already grabbing my suitcase. Her face changed. Something like pity crossed her features. Ma'am, the flight has already boarded. It departed about 10 minutes ago. No, I shook my head. No, that's not possible. My family is on that flight. They would have waited for me. They would have called. Let me check the passenger manifest. She typed again, her fingers clicking against the keyboard. Whitmore. Yes, I have 4 passengers by that name. Michael, Sandra, Tyler, and Madison. They all boarded and the flight has departed. I felt the ground tilt beneath me. All 4. There should be 5. I'm Eleanor Whitmore. I should be on that flight. My son invited me. She looked at me with those pitying eyes. I'm sorry, ma'am. I don't see a 5th ticket under that name. The booking was only for 4 passengers. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. My legs were shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. That can't be right. We planned this trip for months. Sandra said she booked my ticket. She said, I can only see what's in the system, ma'am, and the system shows a 4-person booking. There was never a 5th ticket purchased. Never a 5th ticket. The words echoed in my head over and over like a bell tolling. Never a 5th ticket. Sandra had never booked me on that flight. All those months of planning, of shopping for resort wear, of excitement about finally seeing Hawaii, it was all based on a lie. She had invited me knowing there was no ticket. She had watched me pack, watched me prepare, watched me drag my suitcase through the airport knowing I would never get on that plane. And Michael, my own son, he must have known. He must have been part of it. They had planned to leave me behind. I don't remember sitting down. One moment I was standing at the counter, the next, I was in a plastic chair by the window, staring at nothing. The gate agent brought me a cup of water. I didn't drink it. She asked if I needed assistance. I shook my head. I just sat there watching other families board other flights, watching other people live their lives, while mine fell apart around me. At some point, I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely unlock it. I called Michael. It went straight to voicemail. Hey, it's Michael. Leave a message. Michael. My voice was barely a whisper. Michael, I'm at the airport. You left without me. Please call me back. Please tell me this is a mistake. Please. I hung up and called again. Voicemail. Again. Voicemail. I called Sandra's phone. Same thing. Straight to voicemail. I sent text messages. 1, 2, 5, 10. No response. I sat there for hours watching my phone, willing it to ring, willing someone to tell me this was all a misunderstanding, a mix-up, an accident. But deep down, I knew this was no accident. This was deliberate. This was planned. Around noon, a janitor stopped by my chair. Ma'am, you okay? You've been sitting here a long time. I'm waiting for my family. He looked at me with kind eyes. They coming to pick you up? I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know anything anymore. He nodded slowly like he understood more than I was saying. Well, if you need anything, the customer service desk is just down that way. They can help you get wherever you need to go. Wherever I needed to go. Where did I need to go? Back to Wilmington. To the house I'd lived in for 40 years now, empty and full of ghosts. To the neighborhood where everyone would ask about the family trip, and I'd have to explain what had happened. I couldn't. I couldn't face that. Couldn't face the pity. Couldn't face the shame. Around 2 p.m., my phone finally buzzed. My heart leaped. I grabbed it, desperate, hopeful. It was a text from Sandra. Eleanor, we just landed. The hotel says you never checked in for the flight. What happened? Did you miss the gate? We're very worried. I read it 3 times. We're very worried. Not we're sorry. Not there's been a terrible mistake. Not we're coming back for you. We're very worried. As if I had simply wandered off. As if this was my fault. I typed back with trembling fingers. There was no ticket for me, Sandra. The airline says you only booked 4 seats. 3 minutes passed. Then her response came. That can't be right. I distinctly remember booking 5 tickets. There must have been a computer error. I'll look into it when we get to the resort. In the meantime, can you book yourself a flight tomorrow? We'll reimburse you." A computer error. She was blaming it on a computer error. 18 years of marriage to my son. 18 years of watching me, studying me, knowing exactly how to hurt me. And this was her explanation. A computer error. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my banking app and checked my account. I had $847. Not enough for a last-minute flight to Hawaii, even if I wanted to go. Not enough for much of anything. Then I remembered. The other account. The one Michael didn't know about. The one I'd kept secret since Harold died, squirreling away small amounts whenever I could. Birthday money from old friends, cash from selling things at yard sales, the occasional 20 I'd slip from the grocery budget, my emergency fund, my just-in-case money. I checked the balance. $2,341. It wasn't much, but it was something. It was mine. I looked up at the departure board, studying the flights. Chicago, New York, Los Angeles, Miami, Seattle, and then I saw it. Portland. Departing 7:35 p.m. Portland. The name hit me like a physical force. I hadn't thought about Portland in 50 years. Harold and I had lived there briefly right after we got married. A tiny apartment with a leaky faucet and a radiator that clanged all night. We'd eaten ramen noodles 3 times a week because we couldn't afford anything else. But we'd been happy there. Deliriously, ridiculously happy. Before Michael was born, before the twins we lost, before everything got complicated. Before Harold got sick and life became a series of goodbyes. I stood up. My legs were stiff from sitting for so long. My hip was aching. But something else was happening inside me. Something I hadn't felt in years. A decision. I walked to the ticket counter. 1 ticket to Portland, please. Tonight's 7:35 flight. The agent looked at me. Young, maybe 25, with bright eyes and a friendly smile. One way or round trip? I thought about Michael and Sandra probably at the resort by now, ordering drinks by the pool, not thinking about me at all. One way. She quoted me a price. $487. It would leave me with less than $2,000. I'll take it. She processed the ticket and handed me my boarding pass. Gate 31. Boarding starts in about an hour. Is there anything else I can help you with? I looked at the boarding pass in my hand. Portland, one way. No, I said. I think I've got everything I need. On my way to the gate, I passed a trash can. I stopped, opened my suitcase right there in the middle of the terminal, and dug through it until I found what I was looking for. The matching family t-shirt Sandra had insisted I wear, bright pink with Vacation Nana written across the front in glittery letters. She'd given it to me last week, presenting it like a gift, watching my face as I opened it. "Isn't it perfect?" she'd said. "Now we'll all match." I'd smiled and thanked her. I'd folded it carefully and packed it at the top of my suitcase so I could change into it on the plane. Now I held it up in the fluorescent airport light. Vacation Nana. That's all I'd ever been to them. Not a person, not a mother, not a grandmother. Just a role to be filled when convenient and discarded when not. I stuffed the shirt deep into that trash can and walked away without looking back. Something shifted inside me with that small act of rebellion. Something that had been dormant for years, buried under layers of accommodation and silence. I was done being convenient. I was done being discarded. I was done. The flight to Portland was 3.5 hours of silence. I had a window seat. The middle seat was empty. An elderly man sat in the aisle reading a John Grisham novel. He didn't try to make conversation, and I was grateful. I spent the first hour staring out at the clouds, my mind replaying the day over and over. Sandra's dismissive wave, Michael's silence, 8 hours in a plastic chair while my family flew to paradise without me. The second hour I cried, quietly into a napkin, while the elderly man pretended not to notice. I cried for the mother I'd been always putting everyone else first. I cried for the grandmother, who'd given everything and gotten so little in return. I cried for Harold, who would have never let this happen. The third hour, something changed. The tears dried up. The grief began to harden into something else, something stronger. I pulled out my phone and turned it on. The notifications exploded, 47 missed calls, mostly from Michael, a few from numbers I didn't recognize, 23 voicemails, 91 text messages. I read the texts first, scrolling through them quickly. Michael, 4:23 p.m. Mom, where are you? Michael, 4:45 p.m. We're at the resort. The airline says you never boarded. Call me immediately. Sandra, 4:52 p.m. Eleanor, this isn't funny. Where did you go? Michael, 5:15 p.m. Mom, I'm serious. We're worried sick. Sandra, 5:30 p.m. If this is some kind of dramatic stunt, it's very inappropriate. Call us. Michael, 5:48 p.m. Fine, don't answer. When you're ready to act like an adult, let me know. Sandra, 6:01 p.m. I told Michael this would happen. You've always been difficult. Now you're ruining our vacation with your theatrics. Sandra, 6:45 p.m. The kids are asking where you are. I don't know what to tell them. Are you happy now? Michael, 7:12 p.m. Mom, please, I don't know what's going on, but we can talk about it. Just call me back. I stopped reading. Theatrics, difficult. Acting like an adult. 8 hours. They'd left me for 8 hours, and somehow I was the one being dramatic. I thought about responding, about telling them exactly what I thought of their computer error and their matching t-shirts and their carefully orchestrated abandonment. But what would be the point? They'd twist it, make excuses, gaslight me into believing I was overreacting. I'd spent 18 years being gaslit by Sandra. I wasn't going to spend one more minute. I deleted every message without finishing them. Then I blocked Michael's number, then Sandra's, then I turned off the phone and put it away. Portland was raining when we landed. Of course it was. This was Portland. It was always raining. I stepped off the plane and into the terminal, and for a moment, I just stood there breathing. The air was different here. Cooler, cleaner. It smelled like pine and possibility. I had no plan. I had no idea where I was going to sleep tonight. I had less than $2,000 to my name and a suitcase full of resort wear. It was terrifying. It was the most alive I'd felt in decades. I found a bench near baggage claim and sat down to think. First things first, I needed a place to sleep. I pulled out my phone, turned it back on, and searched for cheap motels in Portland. I found one called the Riverside Inn, $59 a night. Not fancy, but within my budget. I called a cab. The driver was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and a picture of her grandchildren on the dashboard. She looked at me through the rearview mirror. "You okay, honey? You look like you've been through something." I laughed. It came out strange, almost like a sob. "You could say that. Want to talk about it?" I thought about it. This stranger, this woman I'd never see again, was showing me more kindness than my own family had in years. "My son left me at an airport today," I heard myself say. "He and his wife took the kids to Hawaii and left me behind, on purpose." The driver's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "You're kidding me." "I wish I was." That's the worst thing I've ever heard. What kind of person does that to their own mother? The kind I raised, apparently. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You know what my grandmother used to say? She used to say, 'The trash takes itself out sometimes. You just have to let it go.'" I felt tears threaten again. That's very wise. She was a wise woman. Raised 7 kids on her own after my grandfather passed. Never took crap from anyone. She met my eyes in the mirror. "You remind me of her, actually. You've got that same look, like you're figuring out you're stronger than you thought." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just said, "Thank you." The Riverside Inn was exactly what I expected. A 2-story building with peeling paint and a flickering neon sign. Not the kind of place I ever imagined staying. But it was mine. My choice, my decision. The woman at the front desk had gray hair and tired eyes and a name tag that said Dolores. She looked me up and down as I approached. "Checking in, yes please, just for tonight." "1 bed or 2? "1. She handed me a clipboard. "Fill this out. ID and credit card." I filled out the form with hands that barely trembled anymore. When I handed over my driver's license, she squinted at it. Delaware. Yes. You're a long way from home, honey. I don't have a home anymore, I said. Not really. She studied me for a moment, and something in her expression softened. Room 207, second floor end of the hall. Ice machine's broken. Continental breakfast ends at 9. Thank you. And honey, she leaned forward, whatever happened to bring you here, it's going to be okay. I've seen a lot of people come through those doors running from something. Most of them end up finding exactly what they need. I took the key card and headed for the stairs. Room 207 was small. One bed with a scratchy comforter, one chair, one TV bolted to the wall. A bathroom so tiny I could touch both walls at once. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked around. 24 hours ago, I was packing for paradise, excited about a family vacation. Now I was in a $59 motel room in Portland, Oregon, with no plan and no family, and nothing but a suitcase full of sundresses I'd never wear. And somehow, impossibly, I felt more free than I had in years. I kicked off my shoes, lay back on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow I would figure things out. Tomorrow I would make a plan. But tonight I would rest. And for the first time in 18 years, I wouldn't apologize for it. The next few days passed in a blur. I extended my stay at the motel, paying by the week to save money. I bought groceries at the corner store and ate sandwiches in my room. I walked the neighborhood, learning the streets, getting my bearings. On the third day, I found the cafe. It was called Morning Glory, tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore. The kind of place Harold would have loved, all mismatched furniture and hand-lettered menus and the smell of good coffee. I went in for breakfast and ended up staying for 3 hours, nursing a cup of tea and watching the world go by. The owner was a woman named Ruth, somewhere in her 60s with silver hair and strong hands and the kind of no-nonsense manner I respected immediately. She noticed me sitting there alone, staring out the window. "You okay, honey?" "Just thinking." "Dangerous pastime." She slid into the seat across from me. "You new in town?" "Just arrived a few days ago. From on Delaware by way of an airport lounge." Something flickered in her eyes. Understanding, maybe, or recognition. Running from something or running to something. I thought about the question. Really thought about it. Both, I think. Running from people who don't deserve me. Running toward, I don't know yet. Something better, I hope. Ruth nodded slowly. "Well, you picked a good city for starting over. Portland's full of people finding themselves." She stood up. "You looking for work by any chance?" "Work. I need help with the morning shift. My last girl quit 2 weeks ago. Nothing fancy, taking orders, pouring coffee, wiping down tables. But it's honest and it pays." I looked at her. This stranger offering me a lifeline. I'm 77 years old. So I'm 68. Age is just a number. I haven't worked in 20 years. Can you be here at 5:30 in the morning without complaining about it? I've been waking up at 5 for the past 40 years. Can you smile at customers even when they're being idiots? I was married for 40 years and raised 3 children. I can smile through anything. Ruth laughed, a real laugh, warm and surprised. "I like you. Trial shift tomorrow, 5:30 a.m. We'll see how it goes." I showed up at 5:15. Ruth was already there, unlocking the door, a cup of coffee in her hand. "You're early." "Is that a problem?" "No," she said, holding the door open for me. "It's a miracle." The morning shift was chaos. Orders flying, coffee brewing, customers streaming in and out. I made mistakes, plenty of them. Wrong orders, spilled coffee, forgotten change. But I also got things right. I remembered names, I anticipated needs. I moved slower than the younger workers, but I moved steady. At 11 a.m., when my shift ended, Ruth found me slumped in a chair, feet aching. "So," she said, "you coming back tomorrow?" "If you'll have me." "I'll have you." She handed me an envelope. "First day's tips. Not much, but you earned it." I looked inside. $23 I'd earned myself. Standing on my own feet in a city where no one knew me, building something from nothing. It was the best $23 I'd ever seen. That afternoon, I found a room to rent. A small card on a bulletin board at the laundromat. Room for rent. Private room shared kitchen. No drama. $400 month. Call Dot. The house was a faded blue Victorian with a porch that needed painting and a wind chime that sounded like church bells. The woman who answered the door was short and stout with a cigarette in her hand and a cat winding around her ankles. "You the one who called about the room?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm Eleanor." She looked me up and down. "You in trouble?" "Depends on your definition." "The legal kind?" "No." "The violent kind?" "No." "Then what kind?" I met her eyes. "The kind where your family abandons you at an airport and you decide you've had enough." Dot was quiet for a long moment. Then she stepped aside. "Come in. Let's see if we can tolerate each other." The room was small. A twin bed, a nightstand, a window that looked out over the backyard, but it was clean, and it was private, and it was mine. $400 a month, Dot said. First week in advance. No drama, no overnight guests, no cooking fish in the kitchen. I don't like fish anyway. Then we'll get along fine. I paid her the first week's rent in cash and moved my suitcase in that afternoon. That night we sat on the porch together watching the sun go down. Dot smoked. I drank tea. The cat, whose name I learned was Roosevelt, slept between us. "So," Dot said without looking at me, "you going to tell me the whole story?" And I did. I told her about Michael, about Sandra, about 18 years of small cruelties and large betrayals, about the airport, the 8 hours, the flight to Portland. When I finished, she was quiet for a while. Then she said, "You know what I think?" "What?" "I think you spent 77 years being what everyone else wanted you to be, and now you're finally figuring out who you actually are." I felt tears prick my eyes. I don't know if it's brave or stupid. "Honey," Dot said, "at our age, brave and stupid are the same thing. The only question is whether you're going to keep going or give up." She turned to look at me. "So, which is it?" I looked out at the fading light at the city that was slowly becoming my home, at the life I was building from the ashes of the one I'd lost. "I'm going to keep going," I said. "I'm going to keep going until I can't anymore." Dot nodded and raised her mug. "Then welcome to Portland, Eleanor. You're going to fit in just fine." 2 weeks passed. I fell into a rhythm. Wake up at 4:30, walk to the cafe, work the morning shift, walk home, rest, repeat. Ruth promoted me from trial employee to regular staff. The tips got better as I learned the regulars' names and orders. I started remembering things I'd forgotten. I knew how to move through a crowded room, how to juggle multiple tasks, how to be present in a moment instead of always worrying about the next one. Walter started coming in around the second week. He was tall, with silver hair and kind eyes, and a cane he used more for balance than necessity. Every day at 9:10, he'd settle onto the same stool at the counter and order the same thing, coffee with 2 splashes of cream and a cinnamon roll. We didn't talk much at first, just small exchanges, how's the weather, busy morning, that kind of thing. But one day he looked at me and said, "You're new here." "Started a couple weeks ago." "No, I mean new to Portland. You have that look." "What look?" "Like you're still surprised to be here." I laughed. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to someone who's been there." He stirred his coffee. "I moved here 30 years ago, left everything behind. Wife, kids, the whole life, started over from scratch." "Why?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because staying would have killed me. Slowly, invisibly, but surely. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is leave." I thought about Michael, about Sandra, about the airport lounge and the 8 hours and the flight west. "Yeah," I said. "I'm starting to understand that." Walter became a regular fixture in my mornings. We'd talk while I poured his coffee share stories while I wiped down the counter. He told me about his late wife, not the one he'd left, but the one he'd found in Portland, the one who'd shown him what real love looked like. He told me about his sons, one in Boston and one in Arizona, both too busy to call but not too busy to ask for money. "Family," he said one morning, shaking his head. "Can't live with them, can't legally change your DNA." "I'm trying the first option," I said. "The living without part. How's it going?" I looked around the cafe at Ruth, shouting orders at the regulars chatting over breakfast at the gray Portland sky outside the window. "Better than I expected," I said. better than I deserve." "You deserve more than you think," Walter said. "That's the problem with people like us. We spend so long being told we're not enough that we start to believe it." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just refilled his coffee and moved on to the next customer. But I thought about his words all day, all week. Maybe he was right. Maybe I did deserve more than I thought. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Dot brought it in from the mailbox, her eyebrows raised. "You've got mail. No return address, but the handwriting looks young." I took the envelope with trembling hands. I recognized the handwriting immediately. Not Michael's precise print or Sandra's looping cursive. Ethan's, my oldest grandchild. The only one who'd ever looked at me like I was a person instead of a service provider. I opened it slowly, carefully, like it might disappear if I moved too fast. "Grandma, I don't know if this will reach you. I don't know where you are or if you're okay, but I had to try. Dad and Sandra are telling everyone you wandered off, that you're confused and lost. But I know that's not true. You're the least confused person I know. I'm so sorry for what happened at the airport. I didn't know until we were already in the air. Sandra told me you'd gotten on an earlier flight, that you'd meet us at the hotel. By the time I realized the truth, it was too late. I wanted to come find you. I wanted to call the police, file a report, do something. But Dad said no. He said you needed to learn a lesson. He said you'd come crawling back when you ran out of money. I hate him for that. I hate both of them. You're the only person in this family who ever treated me like I mattered, who listened when I talked, who remembered my favorite foods and asked about my day and actually cared about the answers. If you're out there, if you're reading this, please let me know you're okay. Please, I love you, Grandma. I always will. Ethan. I sat on my bed for a long time holding that letter. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't wipe them away. He remembered. He cared. In a family that had thrown me away like garbage, one person had reached out to catch me. That night I wrote him back. I told him I was safe. I told him about Portland, about the cafe, about Dot and Walter, and my little room with the window that caught the afternoon sun. I told him I loved him, and I told him that when he was ready, he could come visit, but only alone. Only when he was sure no one would follow. I mailed the letter the next morning, watching it disappear into the blue mailbox. 1 week later, a man in a suit appeared at the cafe. I was wiping down the counter when Ruth nodded toward the door. "You've got company." I turned. He was young, maybe 40, with slicked back hair and an expensive suit, and the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. "Mrs. Whitmore." "Who's asking?" "My name is David Chen. I'm an attorney representing your son, Michael Whitmore." "Of course." I set down my rag and walked around the counter, stopping a few feet in front of him. "What do you want, Mr. Chen?" "Your family is very concerned about you. They've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I know, I've been avoiding them." He blinked clearly, not expecting that level of directness. "Mrs. Whitmore, your son asked me to find you and assess your condition." "My condition?" "Your mental state. There's been some concern that you may be experiencing confusion." I laughed, loud enough that several customers turned to look. "Confusion. That's what they're calling it. Mrs. Whitmore." "Let me tell you what actually happened, Mr. Chen. Your client, my son, left me at an airport for 8 hours. He and his wife flew to Hawaii without me because they never bought me a ticket in the first place. That's not confusion. That's abandonment." His smile flickered. "I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding. There's no confusion. There's a 77-year-old woman who finally realized she deserves better than being treated like an inconvenience." I stepped closer. "You can go back to Michael and tell him that I'm perfectly sane, I'm perfectly safe, and I want nothing to do with him or his wife." "Mrs. Whitmore, your family is concerned about your assets." "Of course they are." I felt something cold settle in my chest. That's what this is really about, isn't it? Not my well-being, my assets. His silence was all the answer I needed. "You can tell my son that whatever I have is mine. I earned it, I kept it, and I'll do whatever I want with it." I pointed toward the door. "Now get out of my cafe before I call the police." He left without another word. Ruth appeared at my elbow as I watched him go. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." That night I sat on Dot's porch staring at the stars. "They sent a lawyer," I told her, "to check on my mental state." Dot snorted. "Let me guess they're worried about the inheritance." "How did you know?" "Because that's how these people work. They don't care about you. They care about what you represent, free babysitting, future money, someone to blame when things go wrong." She lit a cigarette. "You're better off without them, Eleanor. I know it hurts, but you are." "The thing is," I said slowly, "I'm starting to believe that." "Good. About damn time." We sat in silence for a while, watching the smoke curl up toward the sky. Then Dot said, "You know what tomorrow is?" I thought about it. "Thursday. It's the day you stopped being what they wanted and started being who you are." She raised her mug. "Happy 1-month anniversary, Eleanor. You made it." I raised my mug to meet hers. 1 month. 30 days since the airport. 30 days since I'd been abandoned by my family and found myself instead. And suddenly, sitting on that porch with this woman I'd known for only 4 weeks, I realized something. This wasn't the end of my story. This was just the beginning. A week later, Ethan called. I was sitting in my room reading a book I'd found at the library when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Hello, Grandma." His voice, my grandson's voice. I felt tears spring to my eyes immediately. "Ethan! Oh my God, you're really okay." I could hear him crying on the other end. "I've been so worried. I got your letter and I didn't know if it was real or if..." "It's real. I'm real. I'm here." Where are you?" "Portland, Oregon." "Yes. That's 3,000 miles away." "I know." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "Are you happy there?" I thought about the question. Really thought about it. "Yes," I said finally. "I think I am. For the first time in a long time." "Good. That's good." He took a shaky breath. "Grandma, I need to tell you something." "What is it?" "I found something. On Mom's computer. She left her email open and I shouldn't have looked, but I did." My heart started pounding. "What did you find?" "Emails between her and Dad from months ago before the trip. Ethan, she planned it, Grandma, the whole thing. She never bought you a ticket. She told Dad that if they just left you at the airport, you'd be so confused and embarrassed that you'd finally agree to move into a nursing home. They wanted to sell your house, split the money. They've been planning it for almost a year." The phone nearly slipped from my hand. A year. They'd been planning this for a year. Every smile Sandra had given me, every kind word, every invitation, every family dinner, every "we'd love to have you join us." It was all a setup, a long calculated con to get me out of the way so they could take everything I had. "Grandma, are you still there?" "I'm here." "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I didn't know. I'm so sorry I didn't stop them." "This isn't your fault, Ethan." "But it's not your fault. You didn't do this. They did." I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Thank you for telling me. What are you going to do?" I looked around my small room, my bed, my window, my new life. "I'm going to keep living," I said. "I'm going to keep building the life they tried to take from me, and I'm never going to let them win." I hung up the phone and sat in silence for a long time. A year. They'd been planning this for a year, and I'd been so desperate for their love, so hungry for any scrap of affection, that I'd walked right into the trap. Not anymore. I went downstairs and found Dot in the kitchen making dinner. "You look like you just saw a ghost," she said. "Worse, I just found out my son and his wife have been planning to steal my house for a year. The airport thing, it was all part of a scheme to get me declared incompetent so they could take my assets." Dot's face hardened. "Well, that's the most disgusting thing I've ever heard. I need a lawyer, a real one, someone who can help me protect myself." Dot reached into a drawer and pulled out a business card. "My nephew, family lawyer, helped me when my ex tried to pull something similar." She handed it to me. Call him tomorrow. Tell him Dot sent you." I looked at the card. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Thank me when you take those vultures for everything they've got." For the first time since Ethan's call, I smiled. I intend to. That night I lay awake for hours, not crying, not grieving, planning. My son had tried to destroy me. He'd tried to take everything I had, my home, my money, my dignity. But he'd failed, because in trying to throw me away, he'd set me free. And now finally free, I was going to fight back. Not for revenge, not for money, for myself, for the woman I was becoming, for the life I'd built from the ashes of the one they'd burned. They thought I was weak. They thought I was confused. They thought I would crumble without them. They were about to find out how wrong they were. The next morning, I called the number on the business card Dot had given me. A woman answered on the second ring. "Harrison Law Office. How may I help you?" "I need to speak with Marcus Harrison. Dot sent me. Dolores." There was a pause. "Aunt Dot?" "Yes." "Hold on. I'll get him right away." 30 seconds later, a deep voice came on the line. "This is Marcus. You're a friend of my aunt's. I'm her tenant. My name is Eleanor Whitmore. I need help protecting myself from my son." He didn't ask me to explain. He didn't ask clarifying questions. He simply said, "Can you come in at 2 o'clock this afternoon?" "I'll be there. Bring any documents you have. Bank statements, property deeds, anything related to your assets. And Mrs. Whitmore, yes, whatever they've done to you, we're going to make it right." I hung up the phone feeling something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Marcus Harrison's office was on the 3rd floor of a brick building downtown. The elevator was slow and the carpet was worn, but when I walked through the door marked Harrison Law, I felt immediately at ease. Marcus was younger than I expected, maybe 40, with kind eyes and his aunt's no-nonsense manner. He stood when I entered and shook my hand firmly. "Mrs. Whitmore, please sit down. Tell me everything." So I did. I started at the beginning. Not the airport, but years before that. The small cruelties Sandra had inflicted over 18 years of marriage to my son. The way she'd slowly isolated me from Michael. The backhanded compliments, the eye rolls, the sighs of exasperation whenever I visited. I told him about the invitation to Hawaii, about the matching t-shirts, about how hopeful I'd been, how grateful, how foolishly happy. I told him about the airport, about the 8 hours, about the flight to Portland. And then I told him what Ethan had discovered. The emails, the year-long plan, the scheme to have me declared incompetent so they could seize my assets and sell my home. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. "Mrs. Whitmore, I've been practicing family law for 15 years. I thought I'd seen everything. But this," he shook his head, "this is something else. Can they do it? Can they take my house? Not without a fight. The fact that you're here coherent, employed, living independently, that's powerful evidence against any claim of incompetence." He leaned forward. "But I need to ask you something important. Do you want to press charges?" "Charges. What they did abandoning a vulnerable adult conspiracy to commit fraud. These are criminal offenses. We could involve the police." I thought about it. About Michael in handcuffs. About Sandra being led away in her designer clothes. About the look on their faces when they realized their plan had backfired. It was tempting. God, it was tempting. But then I thought about Ethan. About the position it would put him in having to testify against his own parents. "No," I said finally. "No police. Not yet anyway. But I want to protect myself. I want to make sure they can never touch what's mine." Marcus nodded. "We can do that. We'll start with a new power of attorney naming someone you trust. We'll update your will. We'll put safeguards in place so that no one can access your accounts or property without your explicit consent. And the house, my house in Wilmington, it's still yours. They can't sell it without your signature. But I'd recommend we take some additional steps to protect it. Maybe transfer it to a trust with specific provisions about who can access it and when." I felt tears prick my eyes. I've lived in that house for 40 years. Harold and I raised our children there. I always thought Michael would inherit it someday. That can still happen, if you want it to. But right now, the important thing is making sure no one can take it from you against your will. I wiped my eyes and straightened my spine. Do it. Whatever needs to be done, do it. Marcus smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. We spent the next 2 hours going over paperwork. I signed documents until my hand ached. I named Dot as my emergency contact and power of attorney. I restructured my will to leave everything to Ethan with specific instructions that Michael and Sandra were to receive nothing. When we finished, Marcus walked me to the door. Mrs. Whitmore, can I ask you something? Of course. Why Portland? Of all the places you could have gone, why here? I thought about the departure board at the airport. All those cities, all those possibilities. My husband and I lived here once a long time ago, before Michael was born, before everything got complicated. I smiled at the memory. We were poor and happy. It was the best time of my life. And now, I looked out the window at the gray Portland sky at the rain just starting to fall. Now I'm building a new best time, one day at a time. That evening I told Dot everything that had happened at Marcus's office. She listened, smoking her cigarette, Roosevelt purring in her lap. So you named me as your power of attorney, she said when I finished. I hope that's okay. You're the only person I trust. Dot was quiet for a long moment. Then she stubbed out her cigarette and looked at me with something I hadn't seen in her eyes before. Vulnerability. My husband left me 20 years ago, she said. Ran off with his secretary, cleaned out our savings, left me with nothing but this house and a mountain of debt. My kids sided with him, said I was too difficult, too stubborn, too much. Dot, I'm so sorry. Don't be. It was the best thing that ever happened to me. She smiled a real smile, not the sardonic smirk she usually wore. I learned to survive on my own. I learned that the people who are supposed to love you aren't always the ones who do. I reached over and took her hand. Thank you for taking me in. Thank you for giving me someone to take care of again. She squeezed my fingers. Now stop getting sentimental. We've got a lasagna to make and a bottle of wine to drink. 2 days later, a certified letter arrived from Delaware. I knew what it was before I opened it. The return address was a law firm in Wilmington, the kind with 3 names and an impressive letterhead. I sat on my bed and opened it slowly. Dear Mrs. Whitmore, it began. This letter is to inform you that your son Michael Whitmore has filed a petition with the Delaware Family Court seeking emergency guardianship over your person and estate. The petition alleges that you are suffering from diminished mental capacity and are unable to manage your own affairs. A hearing has been scheduled for November 15th at 10:00 a.m. Your attendance is required. I read it 3 times. Emergency guardianship. They were actually doing it. They were actually trying to have me declared incompetent. My hands started shaking. Not from fear, but from anger. A deep, burning anger that started in my chest and spread through my entire body. I called Marcus. I know, he said before I could speak. I just received a copy. They filed it yesterday. They're calling me mentally incompetent. They're claiming you wandered off in a confused state and have been making irrational decisions. They're citing your sudden move to Portland, your decision to work at a cafe, your refusal to contact family. That's not confusion. That's choice. I know, and we're going to prove it. His voice was calm, steady. Eleanor, I need you to listen to me. This is going to get ugly. They're going to say terrible things about you. They're going to twist everything you've done to make it look like proof of mental decline. Let them try. Are you sure you want to fight this? A court battle will be expensive, emotionally draining. We could try to negotiate, maybe reach a settlement. A settlement. They abandoned me at an airport. They planned to steal my home, and now they want to take away my right to make my own decisions. I felt my voice rising. No settlements, no negotiations. I'm going to walk into that courtroom and show them exactly how mentally competent I am. Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then he laughed a surprised, delighted sound. Mrs. Whitmore, I think you might be my favorite client. Call me Eleanor, and let's get to work. The next few weeks were a blur of preparation. Marcus flew out to Portland twice to meet with me. We gathered evidence, my employment records from the cafe statements from Ruth and Dot, attesting to my mental clarity, medical records from a doctor I'd started seeing in Portland. I even took a cognitive assessment test, the kind they give to people suspected of dementia. I scored in the 98th percentile for my age group. "This is excellent," Marcus said, reviewing the results. "Their entire case rests on the claim that you're mentally diminished. These scores prove the opposite." "What about their emails? The ones Ethan found?" Marcus shook his head. "Ethan obtained them without authorization. They're probably not admissible, but we don't need them. We have plenty of evidence that you're of sound mind. The burden is on them to prove otherwise." Meanwhile, my life in Portland continued. I worked my shifts at the cafe. I came home to Dot's house. I had coffee with Walter every morning and dinner with Dot every evening. But something had changed. The fight with Michael and Sandra had given me a new energy, a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in years. I was no longer just surviving. I was preparing for battle. Ethan called every few days, updating me on what was happening in Wilmington. "Dad's telling everyone you've lost your mind," he said during one call. "He's got aunts and uncles and neighbors all convinced that you're wandering around Portland in a daze." "What do you tell them?" "The truth. That you're working, you're healthy, you're happier than I've ever seen you." He paused. "Not everyone believes me. Sandra's been thorough." "What do you mean?" "She's been visiting people. Your old friend's dad's colleagues, anyone who might be called as a witness. She's planting stories, making you sound confused and erratic." I felt my jaw tighten. "Of course she is." "Grandma, there's something else. Something I probably shouldn't tell you." "Tell me." "They found a doctor, someone who's willing to testify that you're mentally incompetent." "Based on what? He's never even met me." "Based on testimony from Dad and Sandra. And they're paying him. A lot." I closed my eyes. Of course they were buying a diagnosis. That was exactly the kind of thing Sandra would do. "Grandma, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, even though I wasn't. "Thank you for telling me. It helps to know what we're up against." "I want to testify. At the hearing. I want to tell them what I found." "Ethan, no. You shouldn't have to choose sides in this." "I'm not choosing sides. I'm choosing truth." His voice was fierce. "You're my grandmother. You taught me how to ride a bike. You stayed with me when I had the flu and Mom and Dad were too busy. You're the only person in this family who ever made me feel like I mattered." He took a breath. "I'm testifying. They can't stop me." I felt tears streaming down my face. "I love you, Ethan." "I love you too, Grandma. And we're going to win this. I promise." The hearing was scheduled for November 15th, a Wednesday. Marcus and I flew to Delaware the day before. Dot wanted to come, but I asked her to stay and take care of Roosevelt. The truth was, I needed to do this myself. I needed to walk into that courtroom on my own 2 feet and face my son without any crutches. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I lay in my hotel room staring at the ceiling, running through everything that could go wrong. What if the judge believed Michael? What if the bought doctor was convincing? What if I froze on the stand and couldn't defend myself? Around midnight, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Grandma? It's Tyler. Ethan gave me your number. I just wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I didn't know what was happening. I swear I didn't know." I stared at the message for a long time. Tyler, my youngest grandchild, the one who'd barely acknowledged my existence for years. I typed back, "I believe you. Thank you for reaching out." His response came immediately. "I'm coming to the hearing tomorrow. Mom and Dad don't know. I want to see you." I felt something crack open in my chest. Another grandchild reaching out. Another thread connecting me to the life I'd left behind. "I'll see you there," I wrote back. "I love you, Tyler." "I love you too, Grandma." The courthouse was cold and gray, a massive stone building that seemed designed to intimidate. I walked up the steps slowly, Marcus at my side, my heart pounding in my chest. I was wearing my navy coat, the one I'd bought at the secondhand store in Portland. My armor. Inside the hallways were crowded with lawyers and clients and families in various stages of crisis. I saw a woman crying on a bench, a man arguing loudly with his attorney, a child sitting alone looking lost. And then I saw them, Michael and Sandra, standing near the courtroom doors. Michael was in a dark suit, his face pale and drawn. Sandra wore a designer dress and too much makeup, her expression set in what she probably thought was concern, but looked more like triumph. They saw me at the same moment. Michael's face went through a series of emotions: shock, guilt, anger. He took a step toward me. "Mom!" I stopped, looked at him. This man I had raised, fed, clothed, loved for 52 years. "Michael, Mom, we need to talk. Before this goes any further, we can work this out. Can we work out the fact that you left me at an airport for 8 hours? Can we work out the year you spent planning to steal my house?" His jaw tightened. "That's not what happened." "Isn't it?" Sandra stepped forward, her smile razor sharp. "Eleanor, you're not well. That's why we're here. We're trying to help you." I laughed. It came out harsh, bitter. "Help me? You wanted to have me declared incompetent so you could sell my house and split the money. That's not help, Sandra. That's theft. You're confused. I've never been clearer in my life." I stepped closer to her, close enough to see the tiny crack in her composure. "You thought I was weak. You thought I would crumble without you. But look at me, Sandra. Look at me. I'm standing, I'm fighting, and I'm going to win." Sandra's smile faltered, just for a moment, but I saw it. Marcus touched my arm. "Eleanor, it's time." I nodded and walked past them into the courtroom without looking back. The hearing lasted 4 hours. Michael's lawyer went first, painting a picture of a confused old woman who had wandered away from her loving family and was now being manipulated by strangers in Oregon. He presented the bought doctor, who testified that based on interviews with Michael and Sandra, I was clearly suffering from dementia. Then Marcus presented our case. He called Ruth, who testified via video call about my work at the cafe, my reliability, my mental sharpness. He called Dot, who talked about our conversations, my independence, my growth. He presented my cognitive test scores, my medical records, my bank statements, showing careful, responsible management of my finances. And then he called me to the stand. I walked up slowly, my hip aching, my heart pounding. I sat down, raised my right hand, and swore to tell the truth. Marcus's questions were gentle, designed to show my competence. Where did I live? What did I do for work? Why had I moved to Portland? I answered each one clearly, looking directly at the judge. Then Michael's lawyer stood for cross-examination. "Mrs. Whitmore, isn't it true that on August 14th of this year, you abandoned your family at an airport?" I felt my spine stiffen. "No, that's not true." "No, you didn't simply walk away without telling anyone where you were going." "I didn't walk away. I was left behind. There was no ticket booked for me on that flight. Your clients know that." "Mrs. Whitmore, isn't it possible that in your confusion you forgot about the ticket, that you went to the wrong gate?" "I went to the gate my daughter-in-law told me, gate 47. The flight had been moved to gate 52, but no one informed me of the change." "Because they couldn't find you." "Because they didn't look." I felt anger rising in my chest. "They went through a priority security line while I waited in the regular line for 90 minutes. By the time I got through, they had already boarded, without me." "Mrs. Whitmore, your son has testified that he tried to call you multiple times, after the plane had already left, after they were already in the air." I leaned forward. "Let me be very clear about something. I sat in that airport lounge for 8 hours. 8 hours. Do you know what that's like? To sit there watching other families come and go, waiting for someone to come back for you, and no one does." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. "Mrs. Whitmore, do you know what it's like to realize that your own son, the child you raised and loved and sacrificed for, deliberately left you behind, that his wife had never even bought you a ticket in the first place? That's speculation. It's not speculation, it's fact, and I have the records to prove it." Marcus stood. "Your Honor, we have documentation from the airline showing that only 4 tickets were ever purchased for the Maui trip. Eleanor Whitmore's name was never on the reservation." The judge took the documents and reviewed them. Her expression was unreadable. "Continue." Michael's lawyer tried a few more questions, but I could see he was losing ground. Every time he tried to paint me as confused, I responded with clarity. Every time he suggested I was incompetent, I demonstrated exactly how competent I was. Finally, he gave up. No further questions. I stepped down from the stand on shaking legs. Marcus gave me a small nod. I'd done well. The last witness was Ethan. He walked into the courtroom looking pale but determined. When he passed his parents, he didn't look at them. When he took the stand, he looked directly at me. "Mr. Whitmore," Marcus said, "can you describe your relationship with your grandmother?" "She's the best person I know." His voice cracked slightly. "She's always been there for me, always. When I was sick, she stayed with me. When I was struggling in school, she helped me study. When I just needed someone to talk to, she listened." "And in your observation, does your grandmother show any signs of mental confusion or incompetence?" "No, absolutely not. She's sharp as a tack, sharper than most people half her age." "Can you tell the court what you discovered on your mother's computer?" Ethan took a deep breath. "I found emails between my parents, dating back almost a year. They were planning this, all of it. The trip leaving Grandma at the airport, filing for guardianship. It was all part of a scheme to have her declared incompetent so they could access her assets." Michael's lawyer jumped up. "Objection. This testimony is based on illegally obtained evidence." The judge looked at Ethan. "Mr. Whitmore, how did you obtain these emails?" "My mother left her computer open. I wasn't trying to snoop. I was looking for a file for a school project, and I saw them." "Did you take copies of these emails?" "No, ma'am, but I can tell you exactly what they said." The judge considered this. "I'll allow the testimony to continue with the caveat that its weight will be determined accordingly." Ethan continued describing in detail the emails he'd seen, the planning, the calculations about how much the house was worth, the discussions about which nursing homes were cheapest. When he finished, there were tears in his eyes. "I love my parents," he said, "but what they did to my grandmother is wrong. She doesn't deserve to lose everything she's worked for just because they want her money." The hearing ended at 3 p.m. The judge announced that she would review the evidence and issue her ruling within 48 hours. I walked out of the courtroom feeling drained but strangely at peace. Whatever happened, I had done everything I could. Outside on the courthouse steps, Tyler was waiting. He looked different than I remembered, taller, older, and something in his eyes had changed a softness that hadn't been there before. "Grandma." "Tyler." He ran to me and threw his arms around me, hugging me like he hadn't hugged me since he was a small boy. "I'm so sorry," he said into my shoulder. "I'm so sorry for everything." I held him tight, this child I had loved and lost and was somehow finding again. "It's okay, sweetheart. It's okay." When he pulled back, his face was wet with tears. "I want to come visit you, in Portland. Can I do that?" "Anytime. My door is always open." Ethan joined us, and for a moment, the three of us stood there together on the courthouse steps. My grandchildren, the ones who had chosen to stand with me. Michael and Sandra walked past without a word. I watched them go. My son who had betrayed me, his wife who had orchestrated it all. I felt nothing, no anger, no sadness, just a vast, quiet emptiness where my love for them used to be. Maybe it would come back someday. Maybe time would heal this wound. But for now, I was done. The judge's ruling came 2 days later. Marcus called me with the news. His voice was practically vibrating with excitement. "Eleanor, you won." I sat down on my bed, my legs suddenly weak. "What?" "The petition was denied. Full stop. The judge found no credible evidence of mental incompetence and cited concerns about the petitioner's motives." He laughed. She also referred the matter to the state bar for investigation of potential misconduct by the doctor who provided testimony. I felt tears streaming down my face. "It's over. It's over. Your assets are protected. Your autonomy is intact. Michael and Sandra can't touch you." I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "Eleanor, are you there?" "I'm here," I whispered. I can't believe it's really over." "Believe it. You did this. You stood up for yourself, and you won." After I hung up, I sat in my room for a long time, letting the reality sink in. I had won. Not just the court case, not just my assets. I had won my life back. That night, Dot and I sat on the porch, drinking wine and watching the stars. "So that's it?" she asked. "It's really done. It's really done. And your son, what happens to him?" I thought about Michael, about the boy he'd been, the man he'd become. "I don't know," I said honestly. "Maybe someday we'll find a way to heal this. Maybe we won't, but that's not my problem anymore." Dot nodded. "What are you going to do now?" I looked out at the Portland sky, at the rain just starting to fall. "I'm going to keep living," I said. "I'm going to keep working at the cafe, keep having dinner with you, keep building this life I've made." Sounds like a good plan. It is. I raised my glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," Dot echoed, clinking her glass against mine. We sat in comfortable silence, listening to the rain, watching the night deepen. I thought about everything I'd been through. The airport, the 8 hours, the flight to Portland, the job, the room, the lawyer, the courtroom. I thought about who I'd been 3 months ago, a woman who apologized for existing, who made herself small to keep the peace, who believed her only value was in being useful to others. And I thought about who I was now, a woman with a job she loved, a woman with friends who cared about her, a woman who had stood up in a courtroom and fought for her own life. The transformation wasn't complete. I still had bad days. I still cried sometimes late at night, grieving the son I'd lost and the family I'd never really had. But I was moving forward, one day at a time, one step at a time, and I was never going back. The next morning I returned to Portland. Ruth was waiting for me at the cafe when I arrived for my shift. "Well," she demanded, "don't keep me in suspense." "I won!" She threw her arms around me in an uncharacteristic display of affection. "I knew you would. I knew it the moment I met you." "How could you possibly know that?" "Because you showed up early on your first day." She pulled back, grinning. "Anyone who shows up early for a 5:30 a.m. shift is someone who doesn't give up." Walter arrived at his usual time, settling onto his stool at the counter. "Heard you had quite the adventure," he said. "Word travels fast." "It's a small cafe." He smiled. "I'm glad you're back." "Me too." I poured his coffee 2 splashes of cream and slid a cinnamon roll onto a plate in front of him. "You know," he said, "I was thinking. My wife Helen, she had a saying. She used to say that the second half of life is when you finally get to be who you were always meant to be." I considered that. "What do you think, is she right?" "I think she was right about most things." He took a sip of his coffee. "I think the first half of life is about learning what other people want from you, and the second half is about deciding whether you want to give it to them." I thought about Michael, about Sandra, about all the years I'd spent trying to be what they needed. "I'm done giving," I said, "at least to people who don't deserve it." "Good." He raised his cup. "To being selfish in all the right ways." I laughed and raised my own cup. "To being selfish in all the right ways." That evening, Ethan called to check on me. "How does it feel to be back in Portland?" he asked. "Like coming home?" "I'm glad." He paused. "Grandma, there's something I need to tell you." "What is it?" "I'm moving. I got a job offer in Seattle. It's not Portland, but it's close enough for weekend visits." I felt my heart swell. "Ethan, that's wonderful. I wanted to be closer to you. I'm done with Delaware, done with Mom and Dad, done with all of it." "Are you sure that's a big decision?" "I've never been more sure of anything." His voice was firm. "You showed me something, Grandma. You showed me that it's possible to walk away from toxic people, even if they're family. You showed me that it's never too late to start over." I felt tears streaming down my face. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart. I learned from the best." After we hung up, I sat on my bed and let myself cry. Not sad tears, happy tears. My grandson was coming west. My life was coming together. Everything I'd lost was being replaced by something new, something better. 3 months ago, I'd been abandoned at an airport, left behind like forgotten luggage. Now I had a home, a job, friends, family who actually loved me. I had a life, my own life, and I was never going to let anyone take it from me again. The next morning, I woke up at 4:30, made myself coffee, and walked to the cafe in the pre-dawn darkness. Ruth was already there, unlocking the door. "You're early again," she said. "Always." We went inside, turned on the lights, started the coffee brewing. The familiar routine, the comfortable rhythm. At 6 a.m., the first customers started arriving. Jim with his black coffee, Marie with her oat milk latte, Bob, who ordered something different every day just to keep us guessing. At 9:10, Walter arrived. He sat on his usual stool, ordered his usual coffee, and smiled at me in his usual way. "How are you doing, Eleanor?" I thought about the question. Really thought about it. I thought about everything I'd been through, everything I'd lost, everything I'd gained. I thought about the airport lounge and the 8 hours and the flight west. I thought about Dot and Ruth and Walter and Ethan and Tyler and Marcus and everyone else who had helped me rebuild my life from the ground up. I thought about Michael and Sandra and the court case and the victory. And I thought about what came next, the future stretching out before me, uncertain but full of possibility. "I'm good," I said finally. "I'm really, really good." Walter smiled. "I'm glad." I poured his coffee 2 splashes of cream and set it in front of him. Then I turned to the next customer, ready to take their order, ready to do my job, ready to live my life. This was my Portland, my cafe, my second chance. And I was going to make the most of every single day. They had left me behind at that airport lounge thinking they were throwing me away. But they were wrong. They weren't throwing me away. They were setting me free. Winter arrived in Portland with a quiet persistence, the rain turning colder, the days growing shorter. I had been in Oregon for 4 months now, and somewhere along the way, this city had stopped feeling like a refuge and started feeling like home. Ethan moved to Seattle in early December, just as he'd promised. The day he arrived, he drove down to Portland to see me. I was working the morning shift when his rental car pulled up outside the cafe. I saw him through the window, climbing out, stretching his legs after the 3-hour drive from the airport. Ruth noticed me staring. "That your grandson?" "That's him." "Well, go on then. I can handle the counter for 10 minutes. I untied my apron and walked outside. The air was crisp and cold, my breath forming small clouds in front of my face. Ethan turned and saw me. His face broke into the biggest smile I'd seen since he was a little boy. "Grandma." He ran to me and wrapped his arms around me, lifting me slightly off the ground. I laughed, a sound that surprised even me. "Put me down, you'll hurt your back. You weigh nothing." He set me down but kept his hands on my shoulders, looking at me like he was trying to memorize my face. "You look amazing. Seriously, you look 10 years younger than you did in Delaware." "It's the rain, keeps the skin hydrated." He laughed. "I missed you so much." "I missed you too, sweetheart, more than you know." We went inside and I introduced him to Ruth, who immediately started fussing over him, bringing him coffee and cinnamon rolls and asking about his new job. "Software engineering," Ethan explained. "It's boring to explain, but the pay is good and the people are nice. And Seattle, you like it there?" "I will, once I settle in." He looked at me. "The best part is being close to you. 3 hours is nothing. I can come down every weekend if you want." "I'd like that." Ruth excused herself to help a customer, leaving us alone in the corner booth. Ethan's expression grew serious. "Grandma, I need to tell you something about Mom and Dad." I felt my stomach tighten. "What about them?" "They're struggling. Financially, I mean. The court case cost them a lot, and Sandra's been spending money like they still have it." He paused. "Dad called me last week, asked if I could loan them some money." "What did you say?" "I said no." His jaw tightened. "I told him I wasn't going to help the people who tried to destroy my grandmother." I reached across the table and took his hand. "Ethan, he's still your father. I don't want this to ruin your relationship with him. He ruined it himself. The moment he left you at that airport, the moment he signed those court papers." Ethan shook his head. "I used to think he was just weak, you know, that Sandra controlled him and he just went along with it. But that's not true. He made choices. Every step of the way, he made choices. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to defend Michael to find some excuse for what he'd done. That maternal instinct doesn't die easily. But a larger part of me knew Ethan was right. "What about Tyler?" I asked. "Have you talked to him?" "All the time. He's still living with them, but he's counting down the days until he turns 18. He wants to move out here, too." "He's welcome anytime. You both are." Ethan squeezed my hand. "I know. That's what makes you different from them. You actually mean it." We spent the rest of the day together. I showed him my room at Dot's house, introduced him to Roosevelt. The cat took him on a walk through the neighborhood. He met Walter at the cafe and Dot on her porch, and everyone else who had become part of my new life. That evening, we had dinner at Dot's kitchen table. Dot had made her famous pot roast, the one she only brought out for special occasions. "So you're the grandson," she said, studying Ethan over her wineglass. "Eleanor talks about you constantly." Ethan grinned. "Only good things, I hope." "Mostly. She did mention you were a terrible speller as a kid." "Grandma," I protested, but I was laughing. "What?" "It's true. You couldn't spell Wednesday until you were 12. The evening was warm and easy, full of laughter and stories. Watching Ethan interact with Dot, seeing these two parts of my life come together, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Wholeness. After dinner, Ethan helped with the dishes while Dot and I sat in the living room. "He's a good one," Dot said quietly. "You raised him right." "I didn't raise him. I just loved him." "Same thing in the end." Ethan left the next morning, promising to come back for Christmas. I stood on the porch and watched his car disappear down the street, waving until he was out of sight. Dot came up beside me. "You okay?" "Better than okay." I turned to her. "I think this might be the happiest I've been in 30 years. "Only 30, I laughed. "Fine, maybe 40. The week before Christmas, something unexpected happened. I was closing up the cafe, wiping down the last tables, when the door opened. We were technically closed, but I hadn't locked up yet. "Sorry, we're finished for the day. Opens again tomorrow at 6. "I'm not here for coffee." I froze. That voice. I knew that voice. I turned slowly. Michael was standing in the doorway. He looked terrible, thin, unshaven, dark circles under his eyes. Nothing like the polished, confident man I remembered. "Hello, Mom." My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What are you doing here?" "I came to talk to you." "We have nothing to talk about. Please." He took a step forward, then stopped when he saw me flinch. "Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." Ruth appeared from the back room, saw Michael, and immediately moved to stand beside me. "Everything okay here?" "It's fine," I said, though my voice was shaking. "This is my son." Ruth's expression hardened. "The one who left you at the airport." Michael flinched. "I deserve that." "You deserve a lot more than that." Ruth crossed her arms. "Eleanor, you want me to call someone, the police?" "No, it's okay." I took a breath, steadying myself. "You can go, Ruth. I'll handle this." She looked uncertain but nodded. "I'll be in the back. Just yell if you need me." When she was gone, I turned to Michael. My son. The child I had raised, loved, sacrificed for. 5 minutes, I said. "Start talking." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous gesture I remembered from his childhood. "I don't know where to begin." "How about the airport? How about leaving me there for 8 hours while you flew to Hawaii?" "That was Sandra's idea." "And you went along with it." I know. He moved to one of the chairs, then stopped like he wasn't sure if he was allowed to sit. "Mom, I'm not here to make excuses. What I did was wrong. All of it. The airport, the court case, everything." "Then why did you do it?" He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Because I was angry. At you. Angry at me. For what? For everything. For always being there. For making me feel guilty every time I didn't call. For being this constant reminder of all the ways I wasn't measuring up." He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. "Do you know what it's like, Mom? Having a mother who's perfect, who never complains, never asks for anything, just gives and gives and gives until you feel like you can never repay her. I stared at him. You tried to have me declared mentally incompetent because you felt guilty. No, I mean yes, but it's more complicated than that. He sat down heavily in the chair, putting his head in his hands. Sandra convinced me that you were a burden, that you were holding us back. She said if we could just get control of your assets, we could pay off the house pay for the kids' college, finally get ahead. And you believed her. I wanted to believe her. It was easier than admitting that I'd been a terrible son. He looked up at me. I'm not asking you to forgive me. I know I don't deserve it, but I needed you to know that I'm sorry. Really sorry. For all of it. I stood there looking at my son. This man I had loved unconditionally for 52 years. This man who had broken my heart in ways I didn't think were possible. Do you know what the worst part was? I asked quietly. What? It wasn't the airport. It wasn't the court case. It was finding out that you'd been planning it for a year. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. A whole year, Michael. While I was cooking a Thanksgiving dinner, you were plotting to steal my house. While I was buying Christmas presents for your children, you were figuring out how to have me declared incompetent. Mom! I gave you everything. Everything I had. I helped with the down payment on your house. I babysat whenever you needed. I bit my tongue every time Sandra treated me like an inconvenience. My voice was rising now, years of suppressed hurt pouring out. And the whole time you were planning to throw me away like garbage. I'm sorry. Sorry isn't enough. The words exploded out of me. Sorry doesn't give me back the 18 years I spent trying to make your wife like me. Sorry doesn't erase the 8 hours I sat in that airport, wondering what I did wrong. Sorry doesn't fix anything. Michael was crying now, tears streaming down his face. I know it doesn't, but it's all I have. We stood there in silence, the weight of years hanging between us. Finally, I spoke. Where's Sandra? We're separating. I blinked. What? She left last month, met someone else apparently, took half of everything and moved to Florida. He laughed bitterly. Karma, I guess. I didn't know what to feel. Part of me was glad. Sandra had been a poison in our family for 18 years. But another part of me felt hollow. All that destruction, all that pain. And for what? What do you want from me, Michael? I don't know. A chance, maybe. A chance to make things right. He stood up, moved toward me, but stopped when I stepped back. I know I can't undo what I did, but I want to try. I want to be your son again. Your real son. I thought about it. Really thought about it. I thought about all the years I'd spent hoping Michael would change, all the excuses I'd made for him, all the times I'd told myself that deep down he still loved me. And I thought about the past 4 months, the life I'd built, the person I'd become. I don't know if I can do that, I said finally. Michael's face crumpled. Mom, please. You need to understand something, Michael. I'm not the same woman you left at that airport. I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need to make you happy, or make Sandra happy, or make anyone happy except myself. I took a breath. Maybe someday I can forgive you. But not today, not yet. What about seeing you? Can I at least visit sometimes? I considered this. The old Eleanor would have said yes immediately, eager to restore peace, willing to sacrifice her own healing for the sake of family harmony. But I wasn't the old Eleanor anymore. You can write to me, I said. Letters, not emails. Show me that you're serious about changing, and maybe after some time we can talk about visits. Letters, okay, I can do that. And Michael, yes. If you ever try anything like the court case again, I will cut you out of my life completely. No second chances, no more forgiveness. Do you understand? He nodded slowly. I understand. I walked to the door and held it open. Your 5 minutes are up. He walked past me, then stopped on the threshold. Mom, for what it's worth, I'm glad you got away. I'm glad you found a new life. He looked at me with something like admiration. You're stronger than I ever gave you credit for. Then he was gone, walking down the street toward wherever he'd parked his car. I stood in the doorway for a long time watching him go. Ruth came up beside me. "You okay?" "No," I said honestly. "But I will be." Christmas came 3 days later. Ethan drove down from Seattle on Christmas Eve. Tyler surprised us all by showing up on a bus, having told his father he was spending the holiday with a friend. "I couldn't miss Christmas with you, Grandma," he said, when I opened the door and found him standing there, backpack over his shoulder, looking young and hopeful, and nothing like the sullen teenager I remembered. "Come inside," I said, pulling him into a hug. "Come inside before you freeze." Dot had decorated the house with lights and tinsel and a small tree in the corner of the living room. She'd bought presents for everyone, even though I'd told her not to spend money on us. "Christmas is for spending money on people you love," she said when I protested. "Now shut up and open your present." We ate ham and mashed potatoes and green bean casserole. We drank wine and told stories and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Roosevelt wore a tiny Santa hat that Tyler had bought at a gas station, looking thoroughly unimpressed, but tolerating it with feline dignity. After dinner, we sat in the living room full and content. "This is the best Christmas I've ever had," Tyler said quietly. Ethan nodded. "Me too." I looked around at them, my grandsons, my found family, this woman who had taken me in when I had nothing. "When I was at that airport," I said slowly, "sitting in that plastic chair for 8 hours, I thought my life was over. I thought I'd lost everything." "Grandma, you don't have to talk about that," Ethan said. "No, I want to." I smiled at them. I thought I'd lost everything, but what I actually lost was a life that was making me miserable. A son who didn't love me, a daughter-in-law who treated me like garbage, a role that reduced me to nothing more than a convenient babysitter and potential inheritance. I took a breath. And what I found was this: a job I love, friends who care about me, grandchildren who actually want to spend time with me. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. I'm 77 years old. I should be winding down. Instead, I feel like I'm just getting started. Dot raised her wine glass. "To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," we all echoed. Later that night, after the boys had gone to bed in the guest rooms, Dot and I sat on the porch. It was too cold, really, but neither of us wanted the evening to end. "You know," Dot said, "when you showed up on my doorstep 4 months ago, I thought you'd be gone in a week, maybe 2. What changed your mind?" "The look in your eyes. You weren't running away from something. You were running toward something." She smiled. I recognized it because I'd seen it in the mirror 20 years ago. "When your husband left." "Before that, actually. When I decided to leave him." She lit a cigarette. "Everyone thought I was crazy. We'd been married 30 years. He had the money, the connections, the family on his side, but I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't pretend to be happy when I was dying inside." "What did you do?" "I walked out, took nothing but the clothes on my back and my grandmother's wedding ring." She tapped her ash into the tray. "Ended up here, got a job cleaning houses, saved every penny, eventually bought this place." She looked around at the porch, the garden, the life she'd built. Not bad for a woman everyone said was throwing her life away. I reached over and took her hand. "Thank you, Dot, for everything. Don't thank me. You did the work. I just provided the roof." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars. January brought rain and routine. I worked my shifts at the cafe. I had dinner with Dot every evening. I walked through the neighborhood on my days off, learning every corner, every street, every hidden garden. Walter and I had become something more than friends, though neither of us had put a name to it yet. He started walking me home after my shifts, our conversations stretching longer each time. Sometimes he'd stay for dinner at Dot's, the 3 of us talking and laughing like old friends. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, he turned to me. "Eleanor, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Are you happy? Truly happy?" I thought about it, about everything I'd been through, everything I'd lost, everything I'd gained. "Yes, I said finally. I am. Good. He smiled. You deserve it, you know, after everything that happened. I'm not sure anyone deserves happiness, but I'm learning to accept it anyway. He reached over and took my hand. His grip was warm and steady. My wife, Helen, he said slowly. She used to say that happiness isn't something you find, it's something you build, one brick at a time, one day at a time. She sounds like a wise woman. She was. He squeezed my hand. She also said that life is too short to spend with people who don't appreciate you, and too long to spend alone. I looked at him. This man who had become such an important part of my life. This man who asked nothing from me except my company. What are you saying, Walter? I'm saying that I'd like to keep spending time with you, if you'll have me. I smiled. I think I'd like that too. February brought letters. True to his word, Michael wrote. The first letter was awkward, stilted, full of apologies and explanations. But the second was better. And the third was better still. He told me about his life without Sandra, about the divorce proceedings, about the therapy he'd started trying to understand how he'd become someone capable of abandoning his own mother. I keep thinking about when I was a kid, he wrote in one letter, how you used to tuck me in at night and tell me stories, how you made my lunch every day with a little note inside, how you never missed a single baseball game even when you were exhausted from work. I don't know when I forgot all that. I don't know when I started seeing you as a burden instead of a blessing. But I'm trying to remember. I'm trying to be the son you deserved all along. I didn't write back at first. I wasn't ready. But slowly, carefully, I started to thaw. Dear Michael, I wrote one afternoon sitting at my little desk in my room. Thank you for your letters. I'm not ready to forgive you yet, but I'm willing to listen, and maybe with time we can find a way forward. It wasn't much, but it was a start. March brought flowers. Portland was blooming, the gray winter giving way to color and life. Cherry blossoms lined the streets, their petals falling like pink snow. I was walking home from the cafe when my phone rang. Ethan. Grandma, you're not going to believe this. What happened? Tyler did it. He got into college, full scholarship to Oregon State. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk. What? He applied in secret, didn't tell anyone, and he got in, full ride. I felt tears streaming down my face. That's wonderful. That's absolutely wonderful. He wants to call you. Can I patch him through? Of course. There was a click, and then Tyler's voice, young and excited. Grandma? I'm here, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you. You know that, right? What do you mean? When you left, when you walked away from all of it and built a new life. His voice cracked. You showed me that it was possible, that you don't have to stay stuck in a situation just because it's familiar, that you can choose something different. I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. I love you, Grandma, Tyler said. And I'll be in Oregon in the fall. We can see each other all the time. I love you too, sweetheart, more than you know. After I hung up, I stood there on the sidewalk surrounded by cherry blossoms crying happy tears for the second time in as many minutes. My grandchildren, both of them, both choosing to be near me, both choosing to build lives that included me. It was more than I'd ever dared to hope for. April brought closure. Marcus called to tell me that Michael had formally withdrawn any future claims to my estate. He'd signed papers relinquishing all rights, ensuring that everything I had would go to Ethan and Tyler. He didn't fight it, Marcus said. In fact, he seemed relieved. Relieved. I think he's finally accepting what he did, moving on. He paused. Also, I wanted to let you know that Sandra's new husband is under investigation for fraud. Apparently, he wasn't quite as wealthy as he claimed to be. I laughed. I couldn't help it. Karma really does work in mysterious ways. Indeed it does. That evening I sat down and wrote Michael another letter. Dear Michael, I began, I've decided to forgive you, not because you deserve it, not because what you did was okay, but because carrying this anger is too heavy. I want to put it down and walk forward without it. I don't know if we'll ever have the relationship we once had. Too much has happened. Too much trust has been broken. But I'm willing to try building something new, something honest. If you want to visit Portland sometime, I would be open to that. We could have lunch, talk, see where things go. I love you, Michael. I always have. Even when you made it hard. Even when you didn't deserve it. That's what mothers do. Your mom, Eleanor. I mailed it the next morning and felt something shift inside me. A weight lifting. A chapter closing. The day before my 78th birthday, Walter took me to dinner. Not the cafe. A real restaurant with white tablecloths and candles and a menu without prices. Walter, this is too much. Nonsense. It's your birthday, almost. My birthday is tomorrow. Exactly. Almost. He smiled that warm smile of his. Besides, I have something I want to ask you. My heart started beating faster. What is it? He reached across the table and took my hand. Eleanor, these past months with you have been the happiest of my life since Helen passed. You've reminded me what it feels like to look forward to each day. Walter. I'm not proposing marriage. We're too old for all that fuss. He laughed. But I was wondering if you might consider moving in together. We could get a little place, something with a garden for you and a porch for me. I stared at him. You want to live together? I want to spend whatever time I have left with you, every morning, every evening, every moment I can get. I thought about Dot's house, my little room, the life I'd built. And then I thought about this man sitting across from me, this man who made me laugh, this man who listened when I talked, this man who had never once made me feel like a burden or an obligation. Yes, I said. Yes, I would like that. His face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen. Really, really. He leaned across the table and kissed me. A gentle kiss, soft and sweet. Happy, almost birthday, Eleanor. Happy almost birthday to me. My 78th birthday was the best birthday of my life. Dot threw a party. Not a big one, just the people who mattered. Ethan drove down from Seattle. Tyler took a bus from Corvallis where he was doing a summer program before starting college. Ruth closed the cafe early and brought cinnamon rolls. Walter brought flowers and champagne. We gathered in Dot's living room, which she'd decorated with streamers and balloons like I was turning 8 instead of 78. This is ridiculous, I said, laughing. This is perfect, Dot corrected. Now blow out your candles and make a wish. I looked at the cake, at the candles flickering in the dim room, at the faces of the people I loved. What could I possibly wish, for I had everything I needed? I closed my eyes, took a breath, and blew out the candles. Everyone cheered. Later, after the cake was eaten and the presents were opened and the boys had gone to bed, Dot and I sat on the porch one last time. So, she said, you're moving out. I'm sorry, Dot. I know this is sudden. Don't be sorry. She smiled, but there was sadness in it. I'm happy for you, truly. Walter is a good man. You could come visit any time. I plan to. She paused. You know, when you first showed up here, I thought I was doing you a favor, giving you a place to stay while you figured things out. You did do me a favor, the biggest favor of my life. That's not what I mean. She turned to look at me. What I mean is that I thought I was helping you. But the truth is, you helped me too. You reminded me that it's never too late, that there's always more life to live, more love to find, more joy to experience. I felt tears in my eyes. Dot, don't you dare cry. I hate it when people cry. I'm not crying. It's the wind. There's no wind. Then it's allergies. We both laughed and I reached over and hugged her tight. Thank you, I whispered, for everything. Thank you, she whispered back, for reminding me what it means to be brave. 6 months later, I stood in the garden of the little house Walter and I had bought together. It was spring again. The cherry blossoms were blooming. The world was full of color and life and possibility. Behind me, I could hear Walter in the kitchen making coffee. I could smell the cinnamon rolls Ruth had dropped off yesterday. I could hear the phone ringing, probably Ethan calling to check in, or Tyler asking for advice about his classes. I thought about everything that had led me to this moment: the airport lounge, the 8 hours, the flight to Portland, the cafe, the job, the first paycheck, Dot, Ruth, Walter, Michael, Sandra, the court case, Ethan, Tyler, the letters, the forgiveness. A whole life compressed into a single year. A whole transformation born from a single act of abandonment. They had left me at that airport thinking they were throwing me away. But what they actually did was set me free. Free to find a new home. Free to build a new life. Free to become the person I was always meant to be. Walter came up behind me and wrapped his arms around my waist. "What are you thinking about? Everything. Nothing." I leaned back into him. "How lucky I am." "We're both lucky." I turned to face him. This man, this wonderful man who had chosen me, who kept choosing me every single day. "I love you, Walter." "I love you too, Eleanor." We stood there in the garden, surrounded by flowers, holding each other. And I knew with absolute certainty that this was exactly where I was supposed to be. Not because someone had put me here, but because I had chosen it. For myself. Finally. The summer with Walter was everything I had hoped for, and more. We fell into an easy rhythm, the kind that only comes when two people genuinely enjoy each other's company. He made coffee in the mornings while I watered the garden. I cooked dinner while he read the newspaper on the porch. We went to bed early and woke up early and filled the hours in between with conversation and laughter and the quiet contentment of two people who had found each other late in life, but not too late. I kept working at the cafe, though Ruth insisted I cut back to 3 days a week. "You're not getting any younger," she said when I protested, "and you've got a man at home now. Go enjoy him." "I enjoy him plenty. I also enjoy this job." "Stubborn woman. That's why you hired me." She laughed and handed me my apron. "Fair point." Walter came by every morning I worked, settling onto his usual stool at exactly 9:10. Some of the regulars had started calling him Mr. Eleanor, which embarrassed him terribly and delighted me completely. "They're teasing you," I said one morning, refilling his coffee. "I know they're teasing me, I just don't understand why." "Because you're predictable. You come in at the same time, order the same thing, sit in the same seat. There's nothing wrong with consistency. There's nothing wrong with being teased either." He grumbled into his coffee, but I caught the smile he was trying to hide. In August, Ethan got engaged. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon, his voice vibrating with excitement. "Grandma, I have news." "Good news or bad news?" "The best news. I asked Sarah to marry me. She said yes." I sat down on the edge of my bed, my hand over my heart. Sarah was a girl he'd been dating for almost a year, a software engineer like him, kind and funny and completely smitten with my grandson. "Ethan, that's wonderful. I'm so happy for you. We want to get married here in Portland, so you can be there, so everyone can be there." "Of course I'll be there. I wouldn't miss it for the world." "There's something else." He paused. "I want you to walk me down the aisle." I couldn't speak, could barely breathe. "Grandma, are you there?" "I'm here," I managed. "You want me to walk you down the aisle?" "There's no one else I'd rather have. You're the one who taught me what love really means. You're the one who showed me that family isn't about blood, it's about choice." His voice cracked. "Please, Grandma, it would mean everything to me." The tears were flowing freely now. Yes, of course, I would be honored." After I hung up, I sat in my room and cried for 20 minutes. Not sad tears, overwhelmed tears, the kind that come when life gives you more joy than you know how to hold. Walter found me there, eyes, red nose running. "What's wrong? What happened?" "Ethan's getting married. He wants me to walk him down the aisle." Walter's face broke into a grin. "That's not something to cry about." "I'm not crying because I'm sad. I'm crying because I'm happy." "You're always crying because you're happy." "I know. It's exhausting." He sat down beside me and put his arm around my shoulders. "You deserve this, Eleanor. All of it." "I know." I wiped my eyes. "That's the part I'm still getting used to." September brought something I hadn't anticipated. Michael asked to visit. His letter arrived on a Tuesday, written in the careful handwriting I'd come to recognize over the past months. "Dear Mom," it began. "I know we've been writing for a while now, and I've been grateful for every letter. But I was wondering if you might be ready to see me in person. I could come to Portland for a day or two. We could have lunch like you suggested. Talk face to face. I understand if you're not ready. I'll wait as long as you need, but I wanted you to know that I'm trying, really trying, and I'd like the chance to show you." I read the letter 3 times. Then I showed it to Walter. "What do you think?" He read it carefully, his brow furrowed. "What do you think?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to see him, but another part is scared." "Scared of what?" I thought about it. Scared of going backward. Scared of letting him hurt me again. Walter set the letter down and took my hands. "Eleanor, you're not the same woman who got left at that airport. You're stronger now. You have a life, a support system, people who love you." He squeezed my fingers. "If Michael tries to hurt you again, we'll deal with it together. But you won't know unless you try." I looked at the letter again, at my son's careful words, at his attempt to bridge the gap he'd created. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll invite him to come." Michael arrived on a Saturday afternoon. I was nervous in a way I hadn't been nervous in months. I changed my outfit 3 times. I rearranged the living room furniture twice. I nearly drove Walter crazy with my pacing. "He's your son," Walter said gently, "not a job interview." "I know. I just want it to go well." "It will go however it goes. The important thing is that you're trying." The doorbell rang at exactly 2 o'clock. I took a deep breath, smoothed my blouse, and opened the door. Michael looked different, older, thinner. But there was something else, too. Something in his eyes that hadn't been there before. Humility, maybe. Or regret. "Hi, Mom." "Hello, Michael." We stood there for a moment, neither of us sure what to do. Then, awkwardly, he leaned in for a hug. I let him, though my body stayed stiff. "Come in," I said. "Walter's making tea." The first hour was painful. We sat in the living room making small talk about the weather, about Portland, about his drive from the airport. Every sentence felt forced. Every silence felt loaded. Walter excused himself after bringing the tea, giving us privacy. I was grateful and terrified at the same time. "The house is nice," Michael said, looking around. "Smaller than I expected." "We don't need much space, just enough for us." "And you're happy with Walter?" "Very." He nodded, staring into his teacup. "I'm glad. I really am." Another silence. I could feel the words he wanted to say pressing against his lips, the apologies he'd already made in his letters trying to find their way out again. "Michael," I said finally, "what are you really here for?" He looked up, startled. "What do you mean? You've apologized in every letter. You've explained yourself a dozen times, but there's something else, isn't there? Something you haven't said." He was quiet for a long moment. Then he set his teacup down and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I want to understand," he said. "I want to understand how I became someone capable of doing what I did." I've been in therapy for 8 months, talking about my childhood, my marriage, all of it." He looked at me. "And I keep coming back to the same question. When did I stop seeing you as a person? What do your therapists say? They say it was gradual, that Sandra isolated me from you over the years, that I was angry about things I didn't even know I was angry about." He shook his head. "But that's not enough. That's not an explanation for leaving your mother at an airport. Then what is—" "I don't know." His voice cracked. "That's what scares me, Mom. I don't know how I became this person, and I'm terrified that part of me will always be capable of it." I looked at my son. This man I had raised, loved, sacrificed for. This man who had broken my heart in ways I didn't think were possible. And for the first time I saw something other than the person who had hurt me. I saw a person who was hurting. "Michael," I said slowly, "do you remember when you were 7 years old and you broke Mrs. Patterson's window with your baseball?" He blinked. "What? You came home crying. You were so scared. You thought I was going to yell at you, punish you. But do you remember what I did instead?" He was quiet for a moment, searching his memory. You took me to her house, made me apologize. And then what? You helped me do extra chores to earn money to pay for the window. That's right. I leaned forward. You did something wrong, something you couldn't take back. But instead of running from it, you faced it. You took responsibility. You made amends. That was a window. This was worse, much worse. But the principle is the same. I reached over and took his hand. You can't undo what you did. You can't go back and change it. But you can take responsibility. You can make amends. You can become someone better. How do I do that? You already are. You're here. You're in therapy. You're writing letters and asking questions and trying to understand. I squeezed his hand. That's what redemption looks like, Michael. Not a single moment of forgiveness, but a lifetime of trying to be better. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Do you really believe I can change? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I believe everyone can change, I said finally. But I also believe that trust once broken takes a long time to rebuild. I'm not going to pretend everything is okay between us. It's not. But I'm willing to keep trying if you are. I am, he said. I promise you I am. We talked for 3 more hours, not just about what had happened, but about everything that had led up to it. About his childhood, his marriage, his fears and regrets, about the pressure he'd felt to succeed, to provide, to be the perfect son and father. About how Sandra had exploited those pressures, twisted them, used them against me. She convinced me that you were holding us back, he said. That if I just cut ties with you, everything would be easier. And I believed her because it was easier to believe than the truth. What truth? That I was failing, as a husband, as a father, as a son. He shook his head. It was easier to blame you than to look at myself. And now I look at myself every day, and I don't like what I see, but I'm trying to change it. When Walter came back into the room, he found us sitting closer together, the tension in the air notably lighter. Everything okay in here? Getting there, I said, slowly. Michael stood up. I should go. I have a flight to catch. Already. I didn't want to overstay my welcome, not this time. He looked at me. But maybe next time I could stay longer. See the cafe where you work. Meet some of your friends. I nodded. I'd like that. At the door, he turned back. Mom. Yes. Thank you for giving me another chance. I know I don't deserve it. You're my son, I said simply. That doesn't mean I have to like you, but it does mean I have to love you. And I do, Michael, even after everything. I do. He hugged me then, a real hug this time, and I hugged him back. After he left, Walter and I sat on the porch watching the sunset. How do you feel? He asked. Exhausted, hopeful, confused. I laughed. Is it possible to feel all those things at once? I think that's called being human. It's complicated. Most things worth having are. I leaned against him, letting his warmth soak into me. He's different. I could see it, but I don't know if I can trust it yet. You don't have to trust it. You just have to stay open to the possibility. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You just weren't paying attention. I laughed and elbowed him gently. I was busy surviving. I know. He kissed the top of my head. But you're not just surviving anymore. You're living. October came with a surprise. I was at the cafe refilling sugar containers when the door opened and a woman walked in. She was about my age, well-dressed with silver hair, styled perfectly. Something about her was familiar, something I couldn't quite place. She approached the counter. Excuse me, are you Eleanor Whitmore? I set down the sugar container. Yes. Do I know you? We've never met, but I know you. She smiled, but there was nervousness behind it. My name is Margaret Porter. I was Harold's sister. The world tilted. Harold's sister. Harold, my husband, who had died 32 years ago. He'd had a sister named Margaret. They'd been estranged before we even met. I'd never known why. "Margaret," I said slowly. "Harold mentioned you, but he said I wanted nothing to do with him. I know." She clasped her hands together. "It's a long story, and not a good one, but I've been looking for you for years, ever since I heard what happened at the airport." "How did you hear about that?" "It was in the news briefly. Missing grandmother found living in Portland. I did some digging." She paused. "I know this must be strange, me showing up out of nowhere. But I was wondering if we could talk. About Harold. About everything." I stared at her. I stared at this woman who was a piece of Harold, a connection to the man I'd loved and lost so many years ago. "Ruth," I called over my shoulder, "can you cover the counter for a bit?" "Take your time." Margaret and I sat in the back booth. She ordered tea, I ordered coffee. We looked at each other across the table, two strangers connected by a man who had been gone for over 3 decades. "Why did you and Harold stop talking?" I asked. She sighed. "Our father, he was a difficult man, controlling. He played us against each other. By the time we realized what he'd done, too many years had passed. Too much resentment had built up. Harold never talked about it. I'm not surprised. He was ashamed. We both were." She looked at me. "I heard he was happy with you, though, that you had a good marriage." "We did. 42 years. I'm sorry I missed it. I'm sorry I missed him." Tears glistened in her eyes. "I spent so long being angry that I forgot to be sorry, and by the time I remembered, he was gone. I thought about Michael, about all the years I'd spent hoping he would change, about how close I'd come to dying without ever reconciling with him. It's not too late, I said. Harold's gone, but I'm still here, and you're here. Maybe we can't fix the past, but we can build something new. Margaret looked at me with surprise. You'd do that after I abandoned my brother for 40 years. I spent most of my life being abandoned by people I loved. I've learned that holding on to anger only hurts the person holding it. I reached across the table. Tell me about Harold. The Harold you knew before I met him, the boy he was before life got complicated. She smiled through her tears. He was a troublemaker, always getting into scrapes, climbing trees, bringing home stray animals. That sounds like the Harold I knew. He never changed then. No, he never did. We talked for 2 hours. Margaret told me stories about Harold's childhood that I'd never heard. The time he tried to build a rocket ship in their backyard. The summer he rescued a litter of kittens from a storm drain. The way he'd defend her against bullies, even though she was older. In return, I told her about our life together. The tiny apartment in Portland. The 3 children we'd had, Michael and the twins we lost. The 42 years of love and laughter and loss. By the end, we were both crying and laughing at the same time. I'm so glad I found you, Margaret said. I was afraid you'd turn me away. A year ago, I might have. I smiled. But I've learned that life is too short for grudges and too long to spend without family. Margaret became a regular fixture in my life after that. She lived in San Francisco, but she visited Portland every month. We'd have tea-share stories piece together the parts of Harold's life that had been lost to time and estrangement. Walter adored her. She's like a less stubborn version of you, he said one evening. I'm not stubborn. You're the most stubborn woman I've ever met. That's why you love me. That's one of the reasons. November brought Ethan's wedding. The day was clear and cold, with just enough sunshine to warm the outdoor ceremony. Sarah looked beautiful in her white dress. Ethan looked nervous and happy and like he might cry at any moment, and I walked him down the aisle. Every step felt like a dream. Every step felt like a gift. My grandson choosing me. My grandson wanting me to be part of the most important moment of his life. When we reached the altar, he turned to me. Thank you, Grandma, for everything. Thank you for letting me be here. I took my seat next to Walter and Dot, who had come despite claiming she didn't do weddings. Tyler sat on my other side, his face full of emotion. Michael was there too, sitting in the back. We'd agreed he could come, but that he would keep his distance. He was still rebuilding trust, still proving himself. I caught his eye across the crowd. He gave a small nod. I nodded back. Not forgiveness, not yet, but acknowledgement, progress. The ceremony was beautiful. Ethan and Sarah wrote their own vows. They talked about love as a choice, as something you build together brick by brick, day by day. I thought about my life, about Harold, about all the years I'd spent being what others needed me to be. And I thought about this new life, about Walter, about the person I'd become when I finally started choosing for myself. Walter took my hand as Ethan and Sarah kissed the crowd, erupting in cheers. "You're crying again," he whispered. "Happy tears." I know. At the reception, I danced for the first time in years. First with Walter, swaying slowly to an old song that reminded us both of our youth. Then with Ethan, who spun me around until I was dizzy and laughing. Then unexpectedly with Michael. He approached me hesitantly, hand extended. "May I?" I looked at him. My son, the person who had hurt me most, the person who was trying hardest to make amends. "One dance," I said. We moved awkwardly, at first neither of us sure how to hold the other, but slowly, gradually we found a rhythm. "Thank you for letting me come," he said quietly. "Ethan wanted you here." "But you could have said no." "I could have." I looked up at him. "But that's not who I want to be anymore. I don't want to be the person who shuts doors. I want to be the person who leaves them open. Even for me. Especially for you." I took a breath. "You're my son, Michael. That's never going to change. What changes is whether we choose to let the past define us or whether we choose to build something different." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "I want to build something different." "Then show me. Keep showing me. That's all I ask." The song ended. We stepped apart. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something other than pain when I looked at my son. I felt hope. December brought a quiet kind of joy. Walter and I celebrated our first Christmas together in our little house. We put up a small tree, hung stockings by the fireplace, made more food than two people could possibly eat. Ethan and Sarah came down from Seattle. Tyler drove up from Corvallis. Dot came with Roosevelt in a carrier, complaining the whole time about the cold. Margaret flew up from San Francisco. Ruth closed the cafe early and brought cinnamon rolls. And Michael came, with permission, with boundaries. But he came. We gathered around the table, this strange, beautiful family I'd pieced together from the wreckage of the one I'd lost. "Someone should make a toast," Tyler said. Everyone looked at me. I stood up, glass in hand, looking at the faces around the table. My grandsons, my partner, my friends, my sister-in-law, my son. 2 years ago, I began, I was left at an airport lounge. My son and his wife abandoned me there for 8 hours and flew to Hawaii without me. I saw Michael flinch. I kept going. I thought my life was over that day. I thought I had lost everything. My family, my home, my purpose. I paused, letting the words settle. But what I actually lost was a life that was suffocating me, a life where I was convenient but not valued, useful but not loved, a life where I had forgotten who I was and what I deserved. I looked around the table again, at each face, at each person who had helped me become who I was now. What I found in the ashes of that life was this: a job I love, friends who support me, a partner who cherishes me, grandchildren who choose to spend time with me, and slowly, a son who is learning to be the man I always hoped he would be. I raised my glass. To new beginnings, to second chances, to the family we're born with and the family we choose, and to the courage to walk away from what's breaking us toward what might heal us. To new beginnings, everyone echoed, glasses raised. I sat down, and Walter took my hand under the table. "That was beautiful," he whispered. "It was true," I whispered back. "That's what made it beautiful." Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed or gone home, I stood in the kitchen washing the last of the dishes. Michael appeared in the doorway. "Need help?" I handed him a dish towel. "You can dry." We worked in silence for a while, the familiar rhythm of washing and drying, passing dishes back and forth. "Mom," he said finally, "I need to tell you something." I stopped washing. "What is it?" I've been thinking about what you said, about building something different. He took a breath. I've decided to move to Portland, not to be near you necessarily, but to start over. To be closer to Ethan and Tyler. To try to be part of this family you've built. I didn't know what to say. I know I don't have the right to ask for anything, he continued, and I'm not asking you to accept me back into your life like nothing happened. But I want you to know that I'm committed to this, to changing, to being better. I looked at my son, at the gray in his hair, the lines on his face, the earnestness in his eyes. 2 years ago, I would have been suspicious. I would have assumed it was a trick, a manipulation, another attempt to get something from me. But I wasn't that woman anymore. Okay, I said. Okay. Okay, you can move to Portland. Okay, we can try to build something. But Michael, I need you to understand something. Anything. I set down the dish I was washing and turned to face him fully. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing this for me. Because holding on to anger and resentment is exhausting. Because I want to spend whatever time I have left surrounded by love, not bitterness. Because forgiving you is the last thing I need to do to truly be free. He nodded slowly. I understand. Do you? Because forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending it didn't happen. It means choosing to move forward anyway, because the alternative is staying stuck in the past. I understand, he said again, and I promise you, Mom, I will spend the rest of my life earning your trust back, however long it takes. I looked at him for a long moment. Then I reached out and put my hand on his cheek, the way I used to do when he was a little boy. Then welcome to Portland, Michael. I hope you find what you're looking for here. That night, I lay in bed next to Walter, staring at the ceiling. You okay? He asked. I think so. I think I finally let go of the last piece of anger I was holding on to. How does it feel? I thought about it. About the weight I'd been carrying for 2 years. About the resentment that had been sitting in my chest like a stone. Light, I said finally. It feels light. He pulled me closer. Good. You deserve to feel light. I closed my eyes, listening to his heartbeat, feeling the warmth of his body against mine. 2 years ago, I had been left behind at an airport lounge. Today, I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And tomorrow, I would keep building this life I had created, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one act of courage at a time. That was the secret I realized, the secret to surviving, the secret to thriving. You don't wait for life to get better. You make it better, one brave decision at a time. The years that followed were not perfect. Nothing ever is. But they were good. Better than anything I had dared to hope for when I first stepped off that plane in Portland with nothing but a suitcase and a broken heart. Michael moved to the city in January, renting a small apartment not far from the cafe. True to his word, he kept his distance at first, letting me set the pace of our reconciliation. We had lunch once a week, always in public places, always with the understanding that I could leave whenever I needed to. Slowly, cautiously, the lunches became easier, the silences became less awkward, the conversations became deeper. One afternoon, about 3 months after he'd moved, we were sitting at our usual table at Morning Glory when he said something that stopped me cold. I went to visit Dad's grave last week. I set down my coffee cup. Harold's grave, in Delaware, 3,000 miles away. You did? I wanted to talk to him, to apologize. Michael stared at his hands. I know that sounds crazy, apologizing to a dead man, but I needed to say it out loud. I needed to tell him how sorry I was for what I did to you. What did you say? I told him that I'd failed, that I'd become someone he would have been ashamed of, that the way I treated you was the worst thing I'd ever done. He looked up at me, and I told him that I was trying to make it right, that I was going to spend the rest of my life being the son you deserved. I felt tears sliding down my cheeks. Michael. He would have hated me for what I did. I know that. He loved you more than anything, and I took that love and I threw it away like it meant nothing. His voice cracked. I'm so sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry for all of it. I reached across the table and took his hand. Harold would have been disappointed. Yes, but he also believed in second chances. He believed in redemption. I squeezed his fingers, and so do I. That was the turning point. Not forgiveness exactly, but acceptance. An acknowledgement that we had both been changed by what happened and that the only way forward was together. Summer brought Tyler's graduation from Oregon State. We all drove down to Corvallis for the ceremony. Walter and me, Ethan and Sarah Dot refusing to admit she was excited but wearing a new dress for the occasion. Michael came too, sitting apart from us at first until Tyler walked over and pulled him into the family group. "You're part of this too, Dad," Tyler said, "whether you think you deserve it or not." I watched Michael's face crumble and rebuild itself in the span of a heartbeat. He nodded, unable to speak, and took his place among us. When Tyler walked across the stage to receive his diploma, I cried. Not quiet tears this time, full, heaving sobs that embarrassed everyone around me. "Grandma, you're making a scene," Tyler said later, hugging me tight. "I don't care, I'm proud of you." "I know. You've told me about 100 times. I'll tell you 100 more." He laughed and kissed my cheek. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, sweetheart, more than words can say." After the ceremony, we went to dinner at a restaurant Tyler had chosen. The whole family around one table, talking, laughing, arguing about who was paying the bill. I looked around at each face. My grandson successful and happy, Walter steady and loving beside me, Dot pretending to be annoyed but smiling anyway, Michael quieter than the others but present, trying. This was my family now, not the one I was born into or the one I had raised, but the one I had chosen, the one that had chosen me. And it was enough. It was more than enough. Fall brought an unexpected visitor. I was working the morning shift at the cafe when the door opened and a woman walked in. She was young, maybe early 30s, with dark hair and nervous eyes. "Can I help you?" "Are you Eleanor Whitmore?" "Yes." She took a breath. "My name is Jennifer. Jennifer Whitmore. I'm Sandra's daughter from her first marriage." I nearly dropped the coffee pot I was holding. Sandra's daughter. I hadn't even known Sandra had a daughter from before Michael. She'd never mentioned it. Never talked about a previous marriage or a child left behind. I didn't know Sandra had a daughter. Most people don't. She left when I was 3, never looked back. Jennifer clasped her hands together. "I've been following your story, what happened at the airport, the court case, all of it." "Why?" "Because I wanted to find someone else who understood, someone else who Sandra had hurt." Her eyes filled with tears. "She abandoned me too, Mrs. Whitmore. 30 years ago. She walked out and never came back." I stared at this woman, this stranger who shared my pain, who had experienced Sandra's cruelty long before I ever did. "Sit down," I said. "Tell me everything." We talked for 3 hours. Jennifer told me about her childhood, about waiting for a mother who never returned, about the years of therapy and anger and grief, about finally accepting that some people are incapable of love. In return, I told her my story. The airport, the 8 hours, the flight to Portland, everything that had led me to this moment. "You're amazing, you know that," Jennifer said when I finished. "Most people would have crumbled, but you built a whole new life." I didn't have a choice. It was either build something new or give up. And I wasn't ready to give up. "Neither was I," she smiled. "That's why I came to find you. I wanted to meet someone who had survived Sandra, who had come out the other side." "Well, you found me." I reached across the table. "And if you ever need someone to talk to someone who understands, I'm here." "Thank you, Mrs. Whitmore. Call me Eleanor. We're family after all. In the strangest possible way." Jennifer became another unexpected piece of my expanding life. She visited Portland every few months, and we exchanged letters in between. 2 women connected by the cruelty of a third, finding solace in each other's survival. When I told Michael about her, he went pale. "Sandra had a daughter. She never told you. Never. Not once in 18 years. He sat down heavily. "How many people did she hurt? How many lives did she destroy?" "More than we'll ever know." I put my hand on his shoulder. "But we survived. All of us. That's what matters. Winter came again, marking 3 years since I'd arrived in Portland. 3 years since the airport. 3 years since I'd bought that one-way ticket. 3 years since I'd started over from nothing. Ruth threw a party at the cafe. Not a big one, just the regulars and a few friends. Cake and coffee and the kind of warmth that only comes from being surrounded by people who genuinely care about you. 3 years? Walter said, raising his cup. 3 years of loving this stubborn woman. 3 years of putting up with you, I shot back. Everyone laughed. We'd become known for our bickering, Walter and I, the kind of playful arguments that only come from deep comfort and deeper love. Speech, someone called out. I stood up, looking around at the faces in the room. Ruth behind the counter, flower on her apron. Dot in the corner, Roosevelt somehow smuggled in and sleeping on her lap. Ethan and Sarah expecting their first child. Tyler starting his new job in Portland. Michael standing in the back, still uncertain of his place, but present nonetheless. 3 years ago, I began. I was 77 years old, and I thought my life was over. I thought I had nothing left to give, nothing left to hope for. I thought I would spend whatever time I had left slowly fading away, useful to no one, loved by no one. I paused, letting the emotions settle. I was wrong about all of it. I was wrong about what I had to give. I was wrong about what I deserved. And I was wrong about how much life I had left to live. I looked at each person in turn. What I learned in these 3 years is that it's never too late. Never too late to start over. Never too late to find love. Never too late to build a family, even if it looks nothing like the one you imagined. I raised my cup. To second chances, and thirds and fourths and fifths, to as many chances as we need to get it right. To second chances, everyone echoed. That night, Walter and I sat on our porch, wrapped in blankets, watching the stars. "Happy anniversary," he said. "It's not our anniversary. It's the anniversary of when you arrived in Portland. That counts." I smiled and leaned against him. "I suppose it does." "Any regrets?" I thought about it, about everything I'd been through, everything I'd lost, everything I'd gained. "One," I said. "What? I wish I'd done it sooner. I wish I hadn't waited until I was 77 to start living for myself." Walter was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Maybe you needed all those years to become the person who could do it. Maybe everything that came before was preparation." That's a nice way of looking at it. It's the only way of looking at it. We are who we are because of everything we've been through, the good and the bad. You can't separate them. I considered this. The years of putting everyone else first, the years of being convenient, the years of shrinking myself to fit into spaces other people made for me. Maybe Walter was right. Maybe all of that had been necessary. Maybe I had to know what it felt like to be undervalued before I could truly appreciate being loved. "I'm glad I found you," I said quietly. "I'm glad you found me too." He kissed my forehead. "Though technically I found you. You were just standing there looking lost." "I wasn't lost. I was figuring out where to go." "Same thing." "It's really not." "Whatever you say, dear." We sat in comfortable silence, watching the night deepen around us. Spring arrived with new life. Sarah went into labor on a Tuesday morning. Ethan called me from the hospital, his voice cracking with excitement and terror. "Grandma, it's happening. The baby's coming." "I'm on my way." Walter drove me to the hospital. We arrived just in time to sit in the waiting room for 6 more hours, pacing and worrying and drinking terrible coffee from the vending machine. Finally, at 3:47 p.m., Ethan burst through the doors. "It's a girl, 7 pounds 4 ounces. She's perfect." I hugged him, crying again, unable to stop. "What's her name?" He pulled back and looked at me with tears streaming down his face. "Eleanor. Her name is Eleanor." I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, could barely stand. "We wanted to name her after the strongest woman we know," Ethan said. "The woman who taught me that it's never too late to choose yourself. The woman who walked away from everything she knew and built something beautiful from the ashes. Ethan, "You're my hero, Grandma. You always have been. And now my daughter will carry your name and your legacy." I held him tight, this grandson who had become so much more than I ever imagined. This man who had chosen me when his own parents hadn't. "Thank you," I whispered. "Thank you for believing in me. Always." I met baby Eleanor an hour later. She was tiny and wrinkled and absolutely perfect. When I held her for the first time, she opened her eyes and looked at me with the unfocused gaze of a newborn. But something in that gaze felt like recognition, like connection. "Hello, little one," I said softly. "I'm your great-grandmother, and I'm going to tell you so many stories." She yawned, unimpressed. "She has your stubbornness already," Sarah said from the bed, exhausted but smiling. "Good. She'll need it." Michael came to the hospital that evening. He stood in the doorway of the room, uncertain, waiting for permission. Ethan waved him in. "Come meet your granddaughter, Dad." Michael approached the bed slowly. When Sarah handed him the baby, his face transformed. All the walls he'd built, all the defenses he'd erected, they all crumbled in the presence of this tiny new life. "She's beautiful," he whispered. "Her name is Eleanor," Ethan said, "after Grandma." Michael looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes that I hadn't seen in years, maybe decades. Pride, real, genuine pride. "That's perfect," he said. "That's absolutely perfect." Later, after everyone else had gone home, I sat alone with Sarah and the baby. "Thank you," I said, "for the name, for everything." "You don't have to thank me. It was Ethan's idea, but I agreed immediately." Sarah adjusted the sleeping baby in her arms. "You changed his life, you know, when you left Delaware, when you showed him that it was possible to walk away from toxic situations." "I didn't do anything special. I just survived." "That's exactly what was special about it." She looked at me with those kind, intelligent eyes. "Eleanor, you gave him permission. Permission to love you more than his parents. Permission to choose his own family. Permission to be his own person." "I never meant to come between him and Michael." "You didn't. Michael came between Michael and everyone else. You just showed Ethan that there was another way." I looked at the baby sleeping in her arms. This new life carrying my name, carrying my legacy. "She's going to do great things," I said. "I can feel it. With you as her namesake, how could she not?" The following year passed in a blur of joy. Little Eleanor learned to smile, then laugh, then crawl. Every milestone was celebrated. Every achievement was marked with photos and videos and endless grandmotherly pride. I cut back my hours at the cafe, even more down to 2 days a week. Ruth pretended to complain, but I knew she understood. "You've got more important things to do now," she said. "Go be a great-grandmother." "I'll still come in. I'm not abandoning you." "I know. You're too stubborn to ever truly leave. Is that a compliment? Take it however you want." Walter's health began to decline that summer. Nothing dramatic, just the slow wearing down that comes with age. He needed a cane more often than not. He tired more easily. Some days he couldn't make it to the cafe at all. But we adapted. We always adapted. I brought his coffee home on the days he couldn't come out. We sat on the porch and watched the world go by. We told stories and shared memories and made each other laugh. "I'm not ready to say goodbye to you," I told him one evening. "Then don't. I'm not going anywhere." "Walter, I mean it." He took my hand. "I've lived a good life, Eleanor. A full life. Whatever time I have left, I want to spend it with you, not worrying about what's coming, but enjoying what's here." That's very philosophical. I've had a lot of time to think. Too much time, apparently. He laughed and I laughed with him, and we sat together as the sun went down. Michael's transformation continued. He started volunteering at a local shelter, helping families who had been abandoned or displaced. He said it was his way of making amends, of paying forward the second chance I had given him. One day he came to me with something in his hands. A book. No, not a book. A scrapbook. "I made this," he said. "I wanted you to have it." I opened it slowly. Inside were photos. decades of photos. Me as a young mother holding Michael as a baby, me at his high school graduation, me at his wedding, me with Tyler and Ethan when they were small, and then after a blank page, new photos. Me at the cafe, me with Walter, me holding baby Eleanor, me laughing, smiling, living. "I wanted to show you," Michael said, "how you changed, how much happier you look now than you did before." I flipped through the pages, tears streaming down my face. He was right. The woman in the early photos looked tired, worn down, going through the motions. The woman in the recent photos looked alive, vibrant, present. "I'm sorry it took losing you to see what I had," Michael said. "I'm sorry I didn't appreciate you when you were right in front of me." "I'm sorry too," I said. "I'm sorry I let myself be taken for granted for so long." "That wasn't your fault." "Maybe not, but it took two of us to create that dynamic." I closed the scrapbook. "We both made mistakes, Michael. The difference is that we're both trying to do better." "Are we doing better?" I looked at my son, at the gray in his hair, the lines on his face, the hope and fear in his eyes. "Yes," I said, "we are." On my 80th birthday, they threw me a party. Not a small gathering this time. Everyone came. Ethan and Sarah and baby Eleanor, Tyler with his girlfriend, Michael with a cake he'd baked himself, Dot with Roosevelt in her arms, Ruth with the entire morning shift from the cafe, Margaret from San Francisco, Jennifer from Seattle. Walter was there too, in a wheelchair now, but smiling. Always smiling. "This is too much," I protested as I walked into the room and saw the decorations, the balloons, the banner that read, "Happy 80th Eleanor." "It's exactly enough," Dot said. "Now sit down and accept the attention for once in your life." They made me sit in a special chair decorated with ribbons. They brought me presents I didn't need and food I couldn't possibly eat. They told stories and shared memories and made me cry at least a dozen times. Then Ethan stood up. "I want to say something," he announced. The room fell quiet. 80 years ago, this incredible woman came into the world. She spent the first 77 of those years giving everything she had to everyone around her. And then 3 years ago, something happened that changed everything. He looked at me. My grandmother was abandoned at an airport by people who should have loved her. And instead of breaking, she flew. She literally flew to a new city, a new life, a new beginning. In the 3 years since I've watched her become the person she was always meant to be. Strong, independent, joyful, free. He raised his glass. "To my grandmother, the woman who taught me that it's never too late to choose yourself. The woman who showed me that family is about love, not obligation. The woman who has inspired me every single day since she stepped off that plane in Portland." "To Grandma," everyone echoed. I stood up unsteady on my feet, overwhelmed by emotion. "I don't deserve this," I said. "Yes, you do," multiple voices said at once. I laughed through my tears. "All right, maybe I do." I looked around the room at all these faces, all these people who loved me. I spent most of my life thinking that my worth was measured by what I could do for others, how useful I could be, how convenient. I took a breath. It took being abandoned at an airport to realize that I was wrong, that my worth isn't measured by what I give, it's measured by who I am. And who I am is enough, just as I am, without doing anything for anyone. I raised my glass. To all of you, for teaching me what love really looks like, for showing me that family isn't about blood or obligation. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about being there when it matters. To family, everyone said. To family, I repeated. The one we're born into and the one we build. May we always have the courage to choose wisely. That night, after everyone had gone home, I sat by Walter's bedside. He was tired, more tired than usual, but he was smiling. "That was a good party," he said. "It was perfect." "You're perfect." "I'm 80 years old and falling apart." "Still perfect." I leaned down and kissed his forehead. "Get some rest. I'll be here when you wake up." "Promise." "Promise." He closed his eyes and I sat beside him, holding his hand, listening to his breathing slow and deepen. I thought about everything that had led me to this moment. The airport, the 8 hours, the flight to Portland, the cafe, the job, the room at Dot's house, Walter. This man who had walked into my life when I least expected it and had stayed ever since. I thought about all the people I had loved and lost. Harold, the twins, the version of Michael who had existed before Sandra twisted him. And I thought about all the people I had found. Dot, Ruth, Margaret, Jennifer, Ethan and Tyler and Sarah and baby Eleanor. My family. My real family. Built from scratch piece by piece, one act of courage at a time. Walter's hand was warm in mine. His breathing was steady. He was still here. We were still here. And that was enough. That was everything. I stood at the window of our little house watching the sun rise over Portland. 80 years old. 3 years since I arrived. A lifetime since I thought my life was over. Behind me I could hear Walter stirring in bed. Soon he would wake up and I would make him coffee, and we would sit on the porch and talk about nothing in particular. Later, Ethan would call to check in. Tyler would send a photo from his latest adventure. Dot would complain about something or someone. Ruth would text me about a new pastry she wanted me to try. Michael might stop by or he might not. Either way, we were okay. We were finding our way. And baby Eleanor would continue to grow, carrying my name into a future I would never see, but could already imagine. This was my life now. Not the one I had planned, not the one I had expected, but the one I had chosen. The one I had built with my own 2 hands from the ruins of everything that came before. I thought about that woman in the airport lounge. The woman who had sat in a plastic chair for 8 hours, waiting for someone to come back for her. She felt like a stranger now. Like someone I used to know but could barely remember, because that woman had been waiting for someone to rescue her, waiting for someone to tell her she mattered, waiting for permission to live her own life. I wasn't waiting anymore. I wasn't asking permission. I wasn't hoping someone would see my worth. I knew my worth. I had proven it, to myself and to everyone who had ever doubted me. They said, "Stay in the airport lounge, Grandma. We'll come back for you after check-in." But they never came back, and it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because in that airport, in that moment of abandonment, I finally found the courage to save myself. And in saving myself, I found everything. A home, a purpose, a love I never knew I was capable of receiving. A family that chose me every single day, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. A life that was truly, completely, finally my own. So if you're out there sitting in your own airport lounge waiting for someone to come back for you, let me tell you something. Stop waiting. Get up. Walk to that departure board and pick a destination. Buy a ticket to somewhere new, somewhere they can't follow, somewhere you can finally breathe. It doesn't matter where you go. What matters is that you go. What matters is that you choose yourself, because nobody is coming to save you. But that's okay. You don't need saving. You just need permission. And I'm giving it to you right now. Go, live, be free, and never ever let anyone make you feel like you're not worth coming back for, because you are. You always were. And the moment you believe that, truly believe it, your whole world will change. Mine did. And at 80 years old, with a heart full of love and a life full of people who cherish me, I can finally say this with absolute certainty. It was worth it. Every tear, every struggle, every moment of doubt. It was all worth it. Because on the other side of that airport lounge, on the other side of that abandonment, on the other side of everything I thought I had lost, I found myself. And she was magnificent.